What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Water for the Thirsty, where it's the word simply, the word refreshing. I'm the facilitator of our conversation, and we are kicking off our 10th season, year 10. It's beginning today. And with us tonight, we have Courtney, who's hailing from the Bronx. Actually, he doesn't live there, but he's hailing from there. We have Kenrick, who is hailing from Uruwa. Is it Uruwa? Uruwa?
Come again?
No, but Kenrick
It's
is
on the
not.
it's on the other side of your grandma. It's like on the other side of the zoo and the
Oh,
park.
the Bronx. Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
But he's calling in from Spain where it's 2 o'clock in the morning. So we appreciate Kenrick for doing that. Big up to you. With us also is Lorraine, who is in North Carolina, but hails to us from Canada, Jamaica via Canada, Canada via Jamaica, all of that. And then there's Trisha, who I learned today is a friend of
And then
Lorraine.
there's
And I
Trisha.
guess I will leave it to them to tell me more about Trisha because we didn't really get a chance to connect and I didn't get a chance to meet her. So we're gonna do it live on air tonight. Welcome, Trisha. Good to have you. Where are you right now?
I'm in Madison, Alabama.
No, okay, all right.
So
Welcome, welcome.
Huntsville.
And I hear you hail from New York, but I didn't hear what part of New York you hail from.
Brooklyn, New York, by way of St. Vincent.
By way of St. Vincent. All right, cool. Well, welcome. Good to have you. How you know, Lauren?
Oh God, it's a that's like way back. No, we met actually. Did we meet through my uncle or through church? I think it was through
Your
my
uncle.
church. Is it church or my uncle? We met through my uncle. I have a uncle and an aunt that lives here in the city, and they've been out here now for a really long time. So I think that's how we crossed paths, and it's just been, the rest is history. But I was like, what? It was a long time ago. I'm not about to age either one of us, but it was a long time ago. Okay, that's all you need to know.
All right, all right, all right. Well, welcome, welcome. Um, I admire people who accept the invitation to join this group blind. Um, are you blind, or did she give you like some lowdown on the personalities and what takes place here?
She didn't give me no personality. She didn't give me no lowdown. I just know that y'all be holding my friend hostage on Friday night. So I'd be like, she'd be like, I'm in Bible study. And I'd be like, girl, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I know, we was just up chitting and talking and stuff be coming up. And I'm like, all right, as soon as she tell me she's in Bible study, I'll just be like, girl, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Like, because I know she's going to be gone from 5 o'clock till the next day. So, that's all I know.
Kind of possessive. No?
I'm very possessive. Yes, I am. I'm possessive of the things that I care about and the people that I care about.
Learning a lot.
It's okay. Go ahead, soak it all in. It's cool.
All right, all right. So for the sake of everyone, what did she tell you about what we do here?
She told me that y'all study the Bible. She said that you guys have an app and that you guys pick out what you want to read and you get an assignment and then you read it and then you guys discuss. You discuss your point of views about whatever it is that you read, which takes you until 2 a.m. sometimes. It's cool,
Go ahead, Maureen. Go ahead and evangelize.
She's got me sounding like a wayward soul evangelized. Like I ain't never seen a Bible before this night. It was the first time.
I meant evangelize by share the news about the thing, not try to recruit just sending the message. That's all.
It's okay.
Jerry, welcome. We're getting to know Trisha, who's a friend of Lorraine.
Hey, Trisha.
Trisha is in Alabama.
Okay.
But she's from Brooklyn.
St. Vincent.
Brooklyn and St. Vincent.
I'm from St. Vincent. I was raised in Brooklyn, and now I live in Alabama.
Okay.
All right. Jerry is from Trinidad and Tobago, and he lives in Trinidad and Tobago.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I have never visited Trinidad. I've always wanted to, though. I mean, I fly through there if I have to go home, but like I've never actually left the airport and said, "Hey, let me go into Trinidad." So,
come on down.
And on with us now we have the bishop.
The bishop.
That's what we refer to as. Jerry has given her that name, and it is stuck.
Good evening.
You wave like you know this lady. You know this lady, Trisha?
I
Absolutely.
can't be friendly.
Oh, okay, yes, good. You just seem
Dang,
familiar.
you
Seem
just
more
coming for me
familiar more
tonight.
than
Like
friendly.
first, I don't know how to work the technology. I don't know Jesus. I can't say hello. Like Jared,
And now,
what did I
and
do?
now we've reached our cap. There's
Too many New Yorkers.
three New Yorkers, 2
What
Jamaicans. I was like,
do?
this is
I'm just trying to figure out
oh
what
my
I did to
gosh.
Jared because I waved just to be polite because I'm a
Very
polite
good.
person.
It seemed familiar. It seemed a little bit more friendly than polite, and that's cool. Welcome.
It's okay. It's you.
You'll fit right in. Sharika, this is Trisha. She's a friend of Lorraine, and I'm telling you what I know about her. She's a friend of Lorraine. She's from St. Vincent, grew up in Brooklyn, and is now in Alabama. And Kenrick said we have too many New Yorkers on here tonight. Now that you are here,
Now
we're at our limit.
I was actually hoping you weren't gonna come.
I mean, it felt good in here to me. But, you know.
Feels
So you
real.
can tell Trisha anything that you think she should know
yeah.
about, just orientation, anything.
Yeah, New Yorkers always feel great when it's crowded.
It's rich.
That's right.
It's rich in here.
That's
You know,
right.
it feels healthy.
It's diverse. It's open. It's honest.
3 New Yorkers is diverse.
Yeah.
It's diverse.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Let me
She's
tell you
from
something.
Brooklyn. She's from Brooklyn. That's not
You-
even
We not
Brooklyn.
gonna be
well,
your
it
head
was
and tell
different.
you it's raining. That's what we not gonna do.
You are in Alabama with 3 is diverse.
What does that even mean? I mean, wherever I go, it don't matter. I say New York will be everywhere I go.
I think we've
What part of New
alienated.
York you from? You from the Bronx too?
Who?
You from Queens?
Who?
Sharika.
Rika.
Sure.
Oh, she's from the
The
Bronx.
Bronx. She's from the Bronx.
Yo,
That's what I thought.
seriously?
She's from the Bronx.
from the Bronx.
She said it with pride.
Like,
I told you.
Make it sure.
Yeah.
33rd, all the way.
All right. As everyone is here, Trisha, I'm gonna come to you. Lauren, had you read something this week? What did you see? What did you hear? What did you think about as you read this week? Anything stood out to you that was curious, problematic, invigorating, enlightening?
There was one thing that I shared with her, and I said I was gonna go back and look at it because I had highlighted it. But one of the verses I was reading, I was like, wait a minute, I think we have guardian angels for real. It was always something that sounded very colloquial to me, but reading it with my own eyes was like, I think I need to give my guardian angel a name since I know that I have one. But again, I'll go find the verse because I did highlight it. And then Isaiah was very difficult for me to read because I had to go and get the historical context as to what was going on at that time. Because as I jokingly said before, like it was very difficult for me to read and to understand. And some of it was very violent. I was like, dang.
What version of the Bible were you reading?
I was going back and forth between the ESV and New King James.
Okay.
Yeah. So
And you,
I did enjoy reading Psalms and Matthew. That was very good because I had just finished reading Luke on my own. So it was nice to be able to see that from a different perspective and see those stories from a different perspective. But yeah, Isaiah was what I was really struggling with because I didn't really understand the tone of what was going on. I know that there was some like civil unrest going on at the time. I think the people of Israel were like in captivity is what I could pick up. But outside of that, I was just like, I don't know who all these characters are and what the context is of what's going on. So I'm like, ugh.
So we threw you in on the deep end.
I mean, that's the story of my life, actually. So, you know.
So just a couple of things to help orient you. I remember you asking, is there a connection between the
3 books?
The 3 books, sometimes, but it's not always intentional. So what you're actually reading is the Bible all the way through, New Testament, Old Testament in chronology, Psalms and Proverbs. And so you
Got it. Okay.
every day. So
Okay,
the
that
Old
makes
Testament
sense.
is in chronology. If you start in the middle of Isaiah, you're in the middle of the story, and so it's a little bit challenging to pick up. One of the things that the plan does is that it jumps around between books to keep the story going.
Okay.
So that you'll find that you'll read Isaiah, but then jump out to Kings and Chronicles to read about the kings and the kings and the times that Isaiah is preaching in.
Okay. That makes
And then
sense.
when we're done with Isaiah, we go back to Kings and Chronicles to the next king or whoever, and then we would go to any prophecy books that relate to that.
Okay.
You'll notice that if we start at the beginning of the year, because August is a hard time to start, I'll admit that my first time through, I did start in August as well. And Isaiah and Jeremiah nearly pulled my hair out. I almost dug my eyes out, and I was confused as all heck the first time I went through. But then when I started over in January and followed it through, I was like, this makes sense now.
That makes sense. Okay.
And I was better able to follow it. And then Isaiah and Jeremiah have become some of my favorite books because I understand better what's going on, having gone through it again. But you'll get through it. You'll find that in the New Testament, we read the Gospels twice for the year, and then all the other books. And we try to group the writings in the New Testament according to the writers. So like we start the year with the Gospel of Luke, and then we go into Acts because Luke wrote that, and then we go into Romans and do Paul's writings, and then move around like that. We try to group all John's writings together as well. And we link Mark with Peter, since Peter and Mark were close, and a lot of Mark's information came from Peter, so we group those writings together.
Okay.
And so you'll see that as well.
Okay.
You'll also notice that Kenrick is not a big fan of the Psalms because he doesn't think they rhyme.
I don't. It's not even that they. I don't think they like. They don't rhyme.
It's dope. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't rhyme.
They don't rhyme in English.
They don't rhyme in Hebrew. Now I don't know Hebrew, so I can't tell you whether or not that's true. But they don't rhyme in Hebrew. They don't rhyme in Spanish. They don't rhyme.
It's fair.
So
it's fair.
It's fine. There are a couple that we read the psalm the other day with the girls.
My favorite book of the Bible is Proverbs, actually, because I'm a practical person. So it's like it's real easy. Like, do this, do that. If you do this, this is what's going to happen to you. If you do this, then this will happen, and this might not happen. So that's.
Are we just in? We're just in. So like we're new in psalm now.
We're about 17, 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was like,
we
we were
read
just in
17,
Proverbs.
18 this week.
Okay.
We're just starting over Psalm again. We just finished our Proverbs.
Yeah.
And back in Matthew and whatnot. All right. So, Trisha, I was staying with you just a little bit longer. You said there was some verse in Isaiah. Just tell me again what you were telling me about the verse in Isaiah. There was a specific verse that you were mentioning and talking about earlier with Lorraine. Or that Lorraine
that wasn't.
you
I don't think that was it. I'm not sure if that was in Isaiah.
Okay.
I think it was. It may have been in. What were we reading? Was it Luke? Matthew? Sorry. Yeah. Geez, I have so many highlights. It's hard to find right now. But
You said it was about angels.
yeah. I'm trying to go through the highlights to see. Read real quick. Let me find it, and then I'll let you know once I find it.
Lorraine, I'm gonna come across to you then. What you get this week? What you see? What you hear? What stood out to you?
Isaiah. How the king of Assyria was real cocky.
Was real what?
He was talking a whole lot of smack. He was very cocky. Yeah, he was like, don't you know that I did this? And don't trust in that your God. Like, especially like Isaiah 36 and 37. I was like, ooh, this man disrespectful.
Do you think the king was actually saying that, or do you think the spokesman was adding in stuff on his behalf? Because I was listening to that and I was wondering something similar. Because he was saying, "This is what my king says," but it sounded like he was adding in some of his own thoughts there.
Because he probably told him, like, you better make it plain, like translate what I'm telling you right now. Make sure the message get across, because if it don't get across, you're dead when you get back. So make sure they understand. He Probably had to make sure.
You added a lot there.
I mean, the message was clear. So I was like, ooh, he is mad disrespectful. Like he was saying, hold on, let me see.
What chapter was that?
36 and 37 was the ones that stood out most to me. I highlighted it in the Bible.
Okay.
When he was saying stuff like, he was talking about like the military that they have and the strength that they have. And he was like, don't trust your king. Because they were trying to tell him, or somebody was trying to tell him, don't speak in a certain language because the people could speak Hebrew. And they were trying to get him to speak in another language. And he was like, no, this message is not just for you. This message is for everybody. So everybody knows. And in 7, he was like, perhaps you'll say to me, we're trusting in the Lord our God, but isn't he the one who was insulted by Hezekiah? Now that threw me off a little bit because I was like, maybe I need to look back at where Hezekiah insulted him. But then he said, didn't Hezekiah tear down his shrines and altars and had everybody come to one place, which is Jerusalem and Judah? And then he talked about his horses. He was like, okay, if you got 2,000 men to fight, I'm gonna give you 2,000 horses. And he was like, you ain't even got that. You don't even had that to fight. And then he said, and then when he said, what's more, do you think we have invaded your land without the Lord's direction? The Lord himself told us, attack this land and destroy it. Like he's like, we're coming by the Lord, the same Lord you're trying to get help from. Like he sent us to destroy you. I was like, ooh, okay.
You think you're telling the truth?
Now, I felt 2 ways about that because I was like, he could do that. he could send like. I've seen it where he has sent, because he warns you of the destruction that's coming because of like our rebellious nature. And a lot of stories he'll say, this is what will happen to you. Like when he tells them like you're gonna be in exile and cast off, like clearly somebody's coming to get you and they ain't coming unless God sends them for you. So I was like, ooh, okay. Which kind of was like, for me, if I'm hearing this, it's like, well, what's the point of praying? Like, if God sent him here to destroy us, like, you know what I mean? If I was living at that time, what am I praying about? To tell him to go against what he already plans to do? Yeah, and then he said, go ahead.
I was just saying, but people talk about God to send them all the time, and God never talk to them. So, I mean, you know, how and I'm asking that less about the Bible times and more about us. How do we know when to disregard when somebody say God send me, or when to pay attention?
I think for me that's easy. I like to line it up with whatever it is I know that I've read, and then for me, I believe that God speaks to everybody in a very specific way, and that's for you to know what that looks like and how that is. And so if the person speaking to me is someone I wouldn't say that I trust, but I also trust where they are spiritually, and then it aligns with whatever it is that I've read or I've been spoken to in a way that is for me, then that's easier for me to trust. I wouldn't say easy, that's not a good word. I can trust what's being said. And the opposite is also the same. Like there's some people that talk and I'm just like, no, he didn't say that. That was for you. But you think it's for everybody else, but it's really for you. But I think it's just a matter of like, a professor said it to me like this. When people when people are counting money, they don't count fake money, they count real money. So that when fake money slides through their hands, they know the difference because they've studied the real thing. So that's how I feel about, people who say the God said this and God said that. It's like having the real thing in my hand. I'm like, yeah, no, he didn't say that. He definitely did not say that. And if it doesn't line up with something that I've read or something that I've seen or something that I know to be true, like to me, easy to dismiss. Like that was God, but that was you, to tell the difference. But that, for me, I think comes over time. And and testing out the relationship in general for me to get to a place where I can say this is you and this is not.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I would say in this particular story, verse 7 is a sellout that he wasn't that he wasn't being led by God, because he didn't know. 7 sells out that he didn't even know who the God was in order to be able to speak on his behalf. It showed his ignorance about Yahweh when he said that in 7.
They insulted him, right?
Yeah.
I think my video was frozen.
It's not.
Oh, okay. It's frozen on my end. I can't see myself, so I don't know what I look like at this point.
I can see you.
I don't know.
So another thing that stood out for me too was so I wrote a note next to it. I guess it was like, so where he was saying to, let's see, when Hezekiah, the king, was saying to Hezekiah, he said, "Don't let your God in whom you trust deceive you with promises that Jerusalem will not be captured by the king of Assyria." And then further down, he said, he talks about how many people he's destroyed, and he's like, why should you be any different? But later on, they are different, because God was like, okay, oh, you saying all that? All right, but they won't even walk this way. They're not going to circle it. They're not going to enter your, they won't even touch it. They're going to go right back the same way they came. And that's literally what happened.
I like his energy.
Whose energy?
The king.
It's serious.
Tell me more.
I mean, like
he's from New York.
Clearly.
Bronx.
Clearly. No, but seriously, if I'm looking to conquer, a timid spirit does not conquer. No one's gonna second guess their army if I'm walking in like, this is a fair shot. I'm looking to take over. I want you to yield before I shed blood. And then back then, in the absence of, in so many ways, this might get controversial, a real king, and I say real king because the kings of the other lands could make their own decisions versus Judah couldn't. Of course they're gonna boss around. They know you're not running the show here. They know you half the time. They know you scared and you waiting for somebody to help you, right? Like anything less would be in so many ways out of
character.
Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, it's the audacity that I think a lot of Christians don't have, that I wonder if we did have, how the game would change.
Jerry, help me. There's a movie where one of the characters says God is not here today or something like that. I remember watching a movie where one of the bad guys said that and held the people captive and was like, yeah, God is not here today. Was that the one with the Joker?
It sounds very Joker.
Sounds like it. It sounds like a Joker thing to say.
Yes.
That kind of the energy I feel like is coming from the representative of the king here. Like, yeah, God and their gods and help them. What things will make you think it's like a dismissal of gods in general and a classifying of this God as like all the others.
Then the rest of them.
Yeah, like I arrived here. Y'all let me in. Are y'all serious? Like the fact that y'all let me in means y'all unsecure. Like that's just the fact that we're having a conversation. If your guy was gonna protect you, I would have never made it this far. You're bugging. I'm bigger than you. Cut it out. Mm-hmm. Right? Like
the thing that's interesting in that is there are a couple of places in the Old Testament where God says that I will use the king of Babylon,
right,
chastise you and whip you into shape. So it's like I will allow for a situation. There will be some lick shared, a beating shared, maybe with a chair or two, and you then have to decide: am I gonna go left or am I gonna go right? Yeah. So I don't know.
I think it was either yesterday or today's reading where God said, I gave the king of Babylon power to do a thing, but he went too far.
Yeah.
So I had to pull him up. Oh, it was 47.
It's like
47.
he got to reprimand you and he got carried away. So now I'm gonna dial him back.
Yes. Yeah.
He got too big for his bridges.
Yes.
No, I wouldn't even say that.
No.
Let's read it. 47.
No. When I say God is probably saying, yeah, he got carried away. But imagine
his record has been destruction. Like
not only that, but you in so many ways have the authority to create havoc.
Mm-hmm.
Go hard or go home. Like who's going half? Like who's halvesy in that? Like even in the story of Job. Look at it. Like his scene was like, yeah, I'm gonna give you a little bit. Oh, that's not enough. Come on. We gotta go hard. Like you gotta go hard. Like you're making a point here. Like let's play the game. Like
so
I guess
go ahead.
Prudence at some point, like you can go hard and be reckless.
And make mistakes.
They're not believers. Like these are not true believers.
Like, no, prudence has nothing to do with believing.
No. I mean, it's YOLO. Like, let me say something. Like, if I have, like, God knows the fact that I have belief is on the better side of the world. But if I didn't have belief and you get authority, why would you have control?
So the challenge and the dispute that we have in here is, you are correct, Sharika. If you have the authority, and it was one of the things I wanted to point out that I saw what Jesus said in Matthew. So this, Trisha, sometimes when it connects. This week in Matthew, Jesus says of the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So be careful to do everything they say, but don't do what they do. Right? In that sentence, you hear Jesus saying, respect these people because of their position. Right? But then he comes back and says, well, the Pharisees carrying on crazy because you're now full of yourself. Right? That's almost the same thing that he says to Babylon. It's not that I didn't give them into your hands and you didn't have the authority to do what you wanted to do with them, because I gave you that. But you now became full of yourself. Like, I am now the man. Right? It wasn't that they went too hard. It was that in going hard, they became full of themselves. And in becoming full of themselves, that informed how they treated the people.
They forgot where their power was coming from.
Yeah, they forgot that they were an instrument. They now feel, I'm now the boss. It's like when your parents leave the elder sibling in charge and the elder sibling starts to go on a power trip. Right?
But let me ask you this. In many of these situations, did Babylon or the king of Babylon truly understand where that power was coming from, or was it just circumstances that were created by God that allowed them? So their recognition of who God is, right, and yielding to Him and submitting to Him is a completely different situation and perspective from what the children of Israel. Right, so he's never been their God, right? From their perspective, he's a God. Maybe if they're even recognizing him that way. But the circumstance that God created allows Babylon, going back to Sharika's point, and I hate to give her this credit, but to go back to Sharika's point, a circumstance was created to where these people that conquer, and that's what they do, they just did what they did, right? They just conquered based upon what was the circumstance, and the environment that was created.
Yes and no. So one of the things, and Courtney helped me with this, you might have a verse on hand, because I remember you making this point sometime before, when we were doing the Bible study with the other group, that God has expectations of all of these people, which indicates that they have some kind of awareness of what He wants and what He wants from them. So, like in these books, you have the prophecy on this.
Well, we had it in Isaiah. I think we did it in Isaiah, where he talked about Egypt, and he was talking about the role that Egypt had, and he was, I guess the way Isaiah was referencing was like, I gave you this opportunity and you didn't do this. And he ran it with Egypt. He's run it with Assyria. He's run it with a couple other people. So yeah.
So from that standpoint, there's an expectation that they have, or an understanding that they have about and a dynamic or relationship between them. And I say that because let's go back to Abraham, right? When Abraham is told that he's going to be the father of many nations, right? God tells him, but your children are going to be in slavery for 400 years because the sin of the Amorites haven't yet reached their full. Even that dynamic in of itself suggests that God ain't just sitting from a distance and watching them saying that the cup is full. There's some kind of relationship between them and God that he is giving them the same chance that he does with Israel later on in terms of knowing what is right and knowing what is wrong. Here's another example. Nineveh is another good example of God coming in and saying, yo, you all get your act together or I'm going to tear this place down, right? Sodom and Gomorrah is another example of that. And I would even say all the people who were alive at the time of Noah, who were not Jewish or not Jews or whatever. So we see that God has these relationships with all of these people and has expectations of them. And so they have this understanding of him, whether they are fully committed to him or not. Nebuchadnezzar is another example, and he was the king of Babylon, right? God shows up and tells him, and he comes to understand it. And God tells him, you know, even in advance of him going crazy, humble yourself, partners. I give you that power, right? And if you don't humble yourself, I will humble you. He gives him the warning in advance. Many, many years later, he forgets and says, is this not the great Babylon I have built? And then he said, remember I tell you, when you get too big for yourself, I will have to deal with you. And then he loses his mind for 7 years until he says, yeah, use the man. And then he writes this big, long letter to everyone that God is the man and you all should respect him. And I am only here because he put me here. But he never becomes Jewish, right? He never adopts that way of life, but he adopts that respect. Courtney, do me a favor, just go through 47, 1 through 10. 1 through 11. Isaiah 47, 1 through 11.
1 through 11?
Yeah.
All right. Come down, virgin daughter of Babylon, and sit on the dust. Sit in the dust, for your days of sitting on the throne have ended. O daughter of Babylonia, never again will you be the lovely princess, tender and delicate. Take heavy millstones and grind flour. Remove your veil and strip off your robe. Expose yourself to public view. You will be naked and burdened with shame. I will take vengeance against you without pity. Our Redeemer, whose name is the Lord of heaven's armies, is the Holy One of Israel. O beautiful Babylon, sit now in darkness and silence. Never again will you be known as the Queen of Kingdoms. For I was angry with my chosen people and punished them by letting them fall into your hands. But you, Babylon, showed them no mercy. You oppressed even the elderly. You said, I will reign forever as queen of the world. You did not reflect on your actions or think about your consequences. Listen to this. Your pleasure loving kingdom, living at ease and feeling secure. You say, I'm the only one and there is no other. I will never be a widow or lose my children. Well, both these things will come upon you in a moment, widowhood and the loss of your children. Yes, these calamities will come upon you, despite all of your witchcraft and magic. You felt secure in your wickedness. No one sees me, you said. But your wisdom and knowledge have led you astray, and you said, I'm the only one and there is no other. So disaster will overtake you, and you won't be able to charm it away. Calamity will fall upon you, and you won't be able to buy your way out. A catastrophe will strike you suddenly, one for which you are not prepared.
What's the issue with them that God was calling them out for? Was it going too hard?
Yeah, they showed no mercy.
But was it really that? Or was, let me ask you that, is that what's sitting at the bottom or how it manifested on top?
Yeah, I feel like pride and self-sufficiency, and that could manifest itself in different ways. That pride, that arrogance, that, you could get them and gets us as well, right?
I agree with you, Jerome.
That's how all of them were, though. Because, like, even with the king of Assyria, like, a note I wrote was, when he was saying all of what he's saying based off of experience, off of his track record, off of his numbers, off of what he's got access to. So he was confident in what he had. And even like earlier when the Bible said that God was upset with the Israelites because they were depending on Egypt to save them. And he's like, they're going to disgrace, like Egypt's going to disgrace you. Yes, they've got XYZ chariots and all, but they're not going to do what you think they're going to do for you. And then I wrote a note when he was talking about Assyria. I wrote, just because it happened to others doesn't mean it will happen to you. So I'm going to go back. So a lot of this, like, you see the Israelites leaning on men of means and power and influence and all these different kind of things because they think it will save them. And so when the Syrian king comes to them and is like, I got this, I'm going to destroy you. If you see my track record, I destroyed all these other gods. I destroyed all these other kingdoms. You remember this king, that king, that king. He's laying it all out there. And when they prayed, God said, okay, well, yes, his track record has been like nonstop defeat. Like he's killed everybody. But this is about to be that one time where he's not going to do what he's been doing. And so that for me brought a little hope. Because, you know, sometimes we look at our own, and I try to apply this stuff to my life now. We look at the obstacle, I guess the giant, a lot of people, the obstacle that is ahead of us and the influence and the power and the impact it can have and all these different things, which are real things and are like factual, like the numbers are there, the stuff adds up, like it makes sense. But it's like, but God could do opposite. Like he could do different from what you've seen. Yes, everybody's tried A and it didn't work for them, but that doesn't mean it can't work for you. Not because of you, but because of him choosing to do it for you.
Yeah, let me ask you this question. Why did God get up in this instance?
Because he was disrespecting his name. He said, put some respect on my name. Hold up. Because he said, for my own, I highlighted it too. He was like, for my own name and for the promise I made to David, I will defend this city and protect it.
Was that how does that connect to what you were just saying about your situation and your life and when? Because you said it gives a little hope.
Yeah, because there's promises. I'm sure David's not the only person he's made a promise to, right? So he could have promised my ancestor something, and I'm only getting blessed for what was promised to them. Or if somebody's saying stuff against my belief in God and what I believe God could do for me, and they're like, what, you're trusting in God to do blah, blah, blah. Have you not seen the numbers? Like, we can give you A, B, C, D if you just do blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, but I got to trust. Well, God, this guy can't do nothing for you. And God's like, oh, okay, bet. Okay, I got you. I got you. For my own name's sake, I'm going to handle this. Don't you worry. Not because of you, but because they're being mad disrespectful. And they're going to learn today.
How does it make you feel when you realize that God not acting because of you?
Actually, as long as I get blessed.
Hold on. You said how does it feel? What?
When you realize that God not doing it for you.
I mean, I think we've well established that it's not really about us, and we
how does that
look
make you
very.
Feel? It still make you feel a way.
I mean, not really. Not me right now. Before it sucked because it's like, dang, like I'm nobody. Okay, well, dang. You said you knew my hair, the hairs on my head, like you said, like if you know all of that, like I feel like I'm somebody.
I don't think I've analyzed any situations that much to know whether or not I was the prime suspect or not. I mean,
a blessing is a blessing.
Stuff happens, man.
I think it depends.
I don't know. I kind of slightly disagree with that thought process of it not being about you, like in the spiritual sense and in, you know, the fear and respect of God, like, you know, like, yes, it's not about you, but I feel like in a way that like it is, because that scenario makes me think of Job, right? Like his whole story, and why he was selected to go through what he went through. It's like, yeah, it's about God, but it was also about Job and his character, and I feel like in some way, like, yes, it's not about you, but it is about you. It's
Tell
kind
me
of
more
like,
about
to
how it
me,
was
it's
Job and his character. Tell me more
It's
about
because
what you mean there.
he was such an upright person. Like, he did everything that he was supposed to do. He was, what I'm saying, like, he was somebody who truly loved God for, not just for the blessings and for the things that he has, but because of who God is and was for him at the time. And because he has such a big belief in God, and because of who he was and his heart for God is part of the reason why he was tested, which is why the enemy went to him and said, if you take all of his material things away or his possessions away, then he will curse you and he will die. And Job did exactly the opposite. So I think for me, it's like, I get what you're saying as far as like, it's not about you, but I think in a lot of instances, like it is. It also makes me think of like a parent and a child relationship, right? Like at some point in time, if you want your kid to believe that you have their back, you're gonna have to come through, right? Like you can't just like not show up, because then it's just like, who are you? And for me, it's like, okay, if I keep saying, I believe that God is this and God is that, and he's, he's my savior and he's almighty and he's, Elohim, El Shaddai. Like at some point, like you can't just have me out here looking crazy, guy. You're gonna have to show up.
But Trisha,
you know what I'm saying? Like
Trisha, in the Job situation,
I think it's a little bit about that. I don't think it's always about that, but I think it's a little bit about that.
Okay, I can hear that.
But he had kids that died and a wife that, like, it wasn't about them.
No, I mean, it wasn't about them either, but like, again, it was about his
You
heart.
got Bama's, they dead.
But I also,
Gone.
And that's the thing about his heart, though. He had every reason, which goes back to my point of why he was chosen, because he had every reason to say, curse God and die. Even his wife was like, okay, all this stuff is happening.
But he,
allow me to translate a little bit what Kenrick might be getting at, just to kind of get at the question. Why Job and not his wife or his children or the servant, right? Why were their lives disposable, right, for God to make this point about Job, right? Because all these people died in the service of Job. So was it really about Job?
Because Job now has to deal with the mourning of that, right? Like he has to mourn his kids. Like I think,
and the kids were just
they were just pawned.
They're gone tomorrow,
right? Like, and also let's make
people too.
The full story. Job wasn't happy about what was going on. That's why
absolutely not. He wasn't.
What I'm saying is like his character had flaws, and I think the flaws came out. I think this is my opinion. The God the Father is feared in a different way than God the Son. And the Father, and I believe one of the reasons why Job didn't say, man, I'm about to get these 2 middle fingers to the air, is the fear of it all. Like I'm watching this thing just fall apart.
Do you think they gave middle fingers back then?
Definitely. And
like a
yes, absolutely.
Whatever.
No.
That was the tearing of the robe. That's what that was.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, that's usually like a sign of mourning and stuff. But anyway, but the fact of the matter is this: a lot of times we tell the Job story like Job was cool to go along the ride.
No.
Right. But what I'm saying is, and that's how we know it ain't about Job, because I'm sure Job be like, pick somebody else to do it. Like, I don't have to watch my kids die. I don't have to watch my land get ridiculous. I don't have to watch all my cattle. Like, so now that you have saved me, God, and I got nice health, now I'm just lonely. I ain't got nobody but these trashy ass people that turn their back on you anyway, and my dumb behind wife. Now what? Right? Like, I don't think that Job woke up the next day and was like, well, I'm glad that I was the one in this.
No, and I hope that I wasn't giving the impression that that was his thing, because I've actually sat and read Job, so I know for a fact that wasn't the way that he saw it. Job was going through it, okay? Like he was going through it. He was getting dragged for filth. So he obviously wasn't happy, but I still think that his character played a part in why he was chosen to go through this particular trial.
We're not arguing that. I don't think anyone's arguing that. We're asking you what I think what I received from you was that this had something to do with Job.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing you say is that his character had a role to play in him being chosen, but I'm not seeing the connection of that being a part of about Job. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I just think that his character had a part to play because I think that if it were anyone else, they would have broken. Period. That is just, it's really that simple for me.
Let me ask this question from another side. Was Job chosen any differently than Pharaoh?
Was what?
Was Job chosen any differently than Pharaoh?
I only did that because he looked up.
Because Pharaoh was chosen for his character in the same way that Job was, to make the same point about God. And it wasn't about Pharaoh. Pharaoh was a tool.
Job was a little bit more.
So I'm saying it's I use a negative pole and a positive pole.
Yeah, right? I get that, and I understand what you guys are asking me. What I'm struggling with though is this idea, right? And it's something that I've always struggled with when it comes to, like, you know, just religion and church in general, is this idea when it gets right down to it that God is God, and at the end of the day, I don't matter to him. Because to me, that's what you're saying.
We're not saying that at all.
But that, you know,
that's not an idea that we at least I don't believe anybody here is saying we don't matter, because God goes out of his way to save us. Right?
Correct.
Because we do matter. When we're made in his image, like we are his children, and it would be impossible for a parent to say my children don't matter, right? However, what we're talking about is his motivation for his decisions, for some of his decisions and some of his movements.
Right.
And that he's not, we are beneficiaries, but not the motivation.
For me, that's kind of hard. That's hard to digest, but I'll think about it.
Let me say it this way. In this story that we were talking about specifically, that started this conversation, the people were beneficiaries, not the motivation.
Not the motivators. I get that.
He wasn't doing it because they were in distress. He was doing it because his name got
They were disrespecting his name. Yeah.
The fact that they were in stress may have played into it, but it wasn't the why.
It wasn't the why. Yeah.
And I guess that's where we were coming from in terms of, you know, it wasn't about them. It benefited them. It involved them. You know, it's almost like sometimes when mothers used to say, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking about you. Yes, I did call your name, but I'm not talking to you right now.
I'm not talking to you. Yeah. Stay in that child's place.
I'm not saying that part, but I'm just saying the equivalency of talking to someone, talking about someone, but not talking to them.
Yeah, no, I understand. He getting a lot of feedback. Something. It's ringing in my ears.
I was saying he basically said that same thing to Job. Stay in a child's place. That was that whole conversation.
Yeah, in fact.
Yeah, the questions.
When Job's character got checked, Job had no expectation of deliverance. Job was about to go and sit in perpetual pain when he got checked.
He was.
And he didn't go, oh, thank you, God, my blessing is coming. God did that after the fact. Almost as a blind. And didn't come and comfort him and tell him, hold on, change is coming. He said, know your place, know who you're talking to, know who I am. I'm bigger than you, and this have nothing to do with you, so go sit down somewhere.
That's like Isaiah 43. He kind of had that same kind of conversation. He's like, look, like who can help me? Like, which one of y'all can help me? None of y'all can help me. I don't consult you for what I need to do.
Jared, to your question, that's why I actually like the idea that it's primarily about him, because what that means is if him doing what's in my best interest is based on his values, not mine. So even if I'm messed up and undeserving, because he is true to his name and true to his character, he will go the extra mile and do things that I may not be deserving of if it was just about me.
Yeah, that's still a difficult idea for me personally to digest, but I hear it.
Not trying to force it on you, just expressing.
I don't think you are. It's
Okay,
okay.
good. Good. I didn't want you to feel that way.
We good. We good. We're good. We're straight.
Is she from New York? She should be able to handle it.
Oh no, it was Isaiah 40.
Wait a minute, Kendrick. I got it.
Kendrick.
Kendrick.
Can we do something real quick? I know we pointed out the lowest common denominator here in terms of Babylon, Assyria. I would even say, and the Pharisees is their pride. But Psalm 15. There was.
Do you want us to go to
Psalm
that?
15. Psalm 15. I want to flip it to the
What
other
version are you
side.
guys reading from? Because when Kendrick was reading earlier, it was hard to follow because I didn't know what version.
Psalm 15. Courtney is reading. I'm not sure what version he's reading, but Psalm 15.
What version are you going to read, Courtney?
I had a New Living Translation, but I could switch it up if y'all want.
No, I'll switch it to what you're reading. You said Psalm 15?
Yeah, Psalm 15.
Okay.
It's short, but I was listening to it this week, and I was not 100% clear, so I thought I would come and ask you guys my question. But let's read it first, and then I'll ask.
All right.
Hold on. Give me a second.
Who outside in the wild?
Yeah. Yeah, I was just trying to see if I could see where the feedback was coming from. Go ahead, Courtney.
All right. Who may worship in your sanctuary, Lord? Who may enter your presence on your holy hill? Those who lead blameless lives and do what is right, speaking the truth from sincere hearts. Those who refuse to gossip or harm their neighbors or speak evil of their friends. Those who despise flagrant sinners and honor the faithful followers of the Lord and keep their promises even when it hurts. Those who lend money without charging interest and who cannot be bribed to lie about the innocent. Such people will stand firm forever.
All right, my question was, do I have to do these things specifically, or all of these things illustrations of something else? And if they're illustrations of something else, what is being illustrated here? What do all of these things have in common?
I think they're all character traits.
Okay, character traits. What character? What's the character traits? Are they all the same character trait?
They're not all the same, but they're a character of somebody or someone who cares about community, like a greater good. So like someone who isn't going to, like it says, harm their neighbors or, speak gossip or, who's not speaking ill of their friends and things of that nature. I think those are things that are, for me, I believe that are character based. So that's the thread that I see when I'm looking at this.
Okay. I hear character. Because the question is, who may live on your sacred tent? Who may live on your holy mountain is the lead-in. And I saw 7 different types of people, and I'm guessing that there's something that is true about all of these things, and that all of these things represent. And while I hear character, it's still not clear as to what that character trait is. They read like hows instead of what, and I'm trying to get at the what. If that makes any sense.
I'm kind of where Trisha is. I mean, I think the only one I struggle with is the despise flagrant sinners.
Where you see that? Oh, despise will be our person.
Yeah, 4.
Yeah.
Verse 4.
And kind of, I don't know I'm kind of curious about what the verse should be. I mean, what those words actually are.
Well, if you go back to, let's look at it in the KJ and see what it looks like, and then go back from there.
Okay.
Because in King James it says, "In whose eyes a vile person is contempted." Did I read that right? Contempted?
Contemned, something like that.
Contemned. Yeah.
All right.
Even to the Bible to make you sound crazy. And then New King James Version says, "In whose eyes a vile person is despised."
Okay.
But he honors those who fear the Lord.
All right, so let me ask it this way. When we looked at the Pharisees, when we looked at Babylon, when we looked at Assyria, we were able to synthesize it to pride as being the problem. Pride manifests in them taking advantage of people. Pride manifests in them, pride was what the issue at the root of the Pharisees and how they became full of themselves. Pride, maybe even prejudice to a degree.
You're looking for a word that describes the
I'm looking
totality
for an
of their
idea, whether it be
character.
a single word.
But I think Trisha was saying, like, what Trisha was saying kind of makes sense from the sense of community. All of these things that here destroy community, right? They destroy the people who God loves, that he eventually sent his son to die for. It destroys relationships. None of these things are, all of these things like are cancer to a relationship. Someone who gossips, right? That means that they're actually defiling some of the things that say, a person who gossips, they're speaking evil of someone or saying something that's either untruthful, or at least they're not saying it to the people, right? That they're referencing. Speaking truth from sincere hearts, speaking evil of their friends, who lend money without charging interest. Those who, lending money and charging interest and all that kind of stuff. These are things that I think speaks to the character of the kind of people who God either he's separating and saying, I don't want you to be this way, or he's saying the people that do these things, right? The positive of these things, that's the type of people, because it preserves my community. It takes care and it looks after the people. And I think it's consistent with the messages that he's constantly putting forth. Even the expectation that we read in Isaiah, that he had of Babylon. One of the things was like, you took advantage of the elderly, right? He's always looking at the relation. How are you relating to the people? And he's constantly, that's a constant thing we've seen as we've read. And so I think what Trisha said is, I think it does. It eats away at community, right? And the relationship of the people itself. And so, when you're looking at what is it going to be in heaven, right? It's the relationship and it's the communities, all these people that have something in common. And I think those are some of the things that are in common.
So
Go ahead, Larkin.
It made me think of like a love of God and a love of man. So similar to what they're saying, as far as community. You do these things if you love your fellow man, right? But the top part where you live a blameless life and do what is right and speaking the truth, you can only know truth and do what is right with following his commands and what he gives you and how he guides you. So I saw like the love of God, which leads you to the love of man kind of thing. That's what I saw.
So Trisha, I'm gonna try this. Would you say that there's equivalency between Psalm 15, which we just read, and Matthew 25 from verse 31 to 46? And Courtney, you can read that. Are those two verses saying essentially the same thing?
Matthew 25, what?
31 through 46. And I'm asking that because Matthew 15 was the 16th, and Matthew 25 was the next morning. And you were asking if they're connected, and I said sometimes. So I'm asking if you see equivalency there.
25, 31 to 36.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. But when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit upon his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered in his presence, And he will separate the people as a shepherd separates sheep from the goats. He will place the sheep at his right hand and the goats at his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger and you invited me into your home. I was naked and you gave me clothing. I was sick and you cared for me. I was in prison and you visited me. Mm.
I think it's definitely a similar theme for sure. And again, I think that it comes back to these are all things that are community based. These are not things that are personal to one specific individual. It's, I saw you and I did this, and I saw you and I did that. And if I care about you, like, like Lorraine said earlier, then these are things that I you know, will do because I genuinely care about you. But this Matthew 25 and the Psalms that we just read earlier makes me think about, the fruits of the Spirit. Again, it comes back to character. Like, if you are following the word of God and you're following the word of Christ and you're truly, saying your heart is truly changed, then these are the things that you will exhibit. This is the type of character that you will have, with the rest of the world. It's not going to make it super easy, obviously, because people will try you. Oh, they will try you. But that eventually that's what, and in the end, that's what's going to show up.
I have a
Because
question.
that's your character.
Go ahead, Courtney.
My question, I mean, I was going to ask anyway, but I think the verses that I wanted to ask about are sort of related because the word keeps coming up. All right, so this is from Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 and 20. I think this came from, it was like a devotional I was reading this week. And it says 6:19 and 20. 19 says, lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. So my question was going to be, what exactly are those treasures that we're storing up? I mean, I think I've always been told that it is like something like to for better or worse, like your character is that thing that you would be able to that will still remain. We see that there's verses um in the scripture with let's say from Paul, maybe like in First Corinthians or so forth, they'll talk about this bodily transformation that will happen. So like our present bodies will deteriorate because of sin and death and so forth. But um again, I'm thinking now to tie that together with what we're talking about here, like is it that what it is, like that's what's going to be important to develop, because a character is something that is developed, right? It's not something that we're just inherently born with. uh is that what is important, so that when Jesus does return, this is what he's looking for from those people that exhibited these traits, or what is that? That's what I was wondering, is like, is that really, that's the treasure, like your character, like it's not really your personality, or like what is it? uh,
That's a good question,
My
Courtney.
interpretation of that is just the thing that's going to get you into heaven is your character, or but the possessions. In my interpretation of it, I've always thought of it as like material things, like like money and fame and um, all the stuff that goes along with that. That's the thing that the scripture is saying, like, don't store up that stuff, because we are human beings and we tend to get attached to things in a not so good way. And so being attached to it means that it's going to be very difficult for you to give it up. I think so something that came across my mind this week when I read, some of those same verses, I thought about like people that are like super rich and super wealthy, like your one percenters. And it's like, if I have that kind of access here on earth, like what's going to make me believe that there's a heaven someplace else for me after I leave this plane, if I've already, for lack of a better term, created my own heaven here on earth because I have access to everything. And to me, when I read those verses, like that's what stands out to me in my mind. Like that's what comes to my mind. Like it's okay for you to have, possessions and nice things because, again, coming back to character, if you have a good character, then you use those things to be good to the people around you, and not just your family, but your community and the people that you meet every day. But if you have so much of it that you stop believing or you stop acknowledging where the ability for you to create such access and such wealth comes from, then it makes it difficult for you to say that, okay, after this, when I die, there is another place for me to exist, or there's going to be, someplace else for me to go, or Father for me to see. So that's what stands out to me. It's like you're cultivating your character because at the end of the day, your character is the only thing that you're going to be able to take with you.
I thought that you were just paying tithe. You pay tithe, so you store it with the church.
Being Kendrick, I kind of think I'm similar, but not. I think it's very easy, especially now in the Instagram, TikTok, whatever generation. The focus is only on getting things. It's an attainment, but you don't really have very much that steers you along the lines of character development. So the thing, there's this expression, majoring in minors. We're putting all of this effort into things that don't really matter that much in the eternal scheme of things, right? The things, your character is what will determine how you treat God's community. If you're self-centered or selfish, and that's a whole other discussion, because sometimes being self-centered or self-obsessed because of your trauma and trying to protect yourself is way worse than being selfish, right? But if you don't have that character, you're gonna mess with God's community on unbelievable levels, right? And I think looking at the text,
Shrika's face.
Humility, right? Anyway, go ahead, Shrika.
Yeah, go ahead, Shrika.
I struggle with this. I very much struggle with this because I don't feel I'm not a socialist or anyone who believes that. In so many ways, I'm a capitalist, if I'm being honest with myself. Maybe even borderline Republican, depending on who you ask. Anyway, I say that to say, I don't think wealth and character are related in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I believe that I can have a good character and still be wealthy, and I believe I can be Baroque and have a horrible character.
Absolutely.
And I think we make an assumption of what let's not even say 1%, the 5% really value. There are people who really don't value as money the way you think they do, and they have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it's a hard sell that I think makes us feel better as a society to say, well, because I'm rich, it's going to be harder. To be quite frank, I'm going to be honest with y'all. When I was extremely poor, it was hard to believe in God. This can't be the life that you want me to live, bro. I don't look good this way. Like, this doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I don't know how we supposed to do this. But I say that to say that's not because if I evaluate where my mindset was, that's an underdeveloped character that's showing its way as a non-rich person. And that's why I'm saying the two are not proportional. And I also don't feel as if there is this responsibility to even the playing field either. And I say that because some of God's favorite people were rich as F.
Yeah, so I wasn't, and not to cut you off, but I wasn't equating character to wealth and saying that one has to do with the other.
No,
but one absolutely does not have to do with the other.
When statements are made, like, well, if I make a heaven for myself down here, then I'm not really looking forward to something up there. I think that's a touchy situation because
I understand that, but I'm not saying that you automatically say that. I said that it would make it challenging.
And so I'm defending that because I am making a lovely heaven for myself down here. And it's no more challenging or less challenging than it was when I was less financially far. And maybe that's a trigger for me because I hear a lot of people like, I think we think about what it may mean to amass wealth in some way, shape, or form.
So my thing is not about amassing wealth, because if you talk to Lorraine any day of the week, she'll tell you that I believe that I'm going to be filthy, stinking rich at some point in time. That is my goal, like, period, right? I come from a family of entrepreneurs, so that's what they do, and that's what I believe, and that's just what it is. I personally don't have an issue with anyone who wants to be a capitalist or wants to be rich or wants to be comfortable. I want to be comfortable in this life. I don't want to live in hell and then die and go to hell. Like, where they do that at? Like, that's not my thing. What I'm saying is, though, is you cannot, for me, I feel like it's very difficult to say for me that I don't.
As long as you own it,
maybe I can help.
As long as you own it,
maybe I can help.
I'm with you when you say that one doesn't have to do with the other. We know plenty of, I mean, if you turn on the news, there's plenty of people with trash characters who have billions and billions of dollars. So obviously character doesn't have anything to do with it. What I'm saying, though, is what the scripture is referring to is just saying that, yeah, it's not a bad thing for you to have money. Like, plenty of God's favorite people in the Bible they were freaking loaded. Okay. Like, that was their lot in life. But I still think that having all of that and having all of that access in some way, shape, or form does make it difficult for you. Right. I think it's like a 50-50. I think it's difficult for you to be.
But that's biblical.
Let's go there.
That's biblical.
Let's go there, because what I'm hearing from Sharika is that maybe it makes it difficult, but not for the reasons that you are implying.
Right? Yes.
So
yes.
Why is it difficult for a rich person? Is it because they've made a heaven here and they don't want heaven? Because I don't think that, and I think one of the assumptions that may be sitting unconsciously underneath there is that heaven is the goal, right?
Right.
And I think if heaven becomes the goal, then you start filtering all the other stuff in through that lens.
Right.
And one of the things I understand about that statement that God makes about it's difficult for a rich man to go into heaven is that a rich man has no need of God.
Yeah, he's confident in what he's got.
He's the same as the Pharisee, and from that standpoint, not from his wealth standpoint, but from his independence.
Yeah.
Right. I can now take care of whatever I need to take care of.
Right.
And so there is no need for me to submit to a God.
Right. Okay. You said it way better than I could have. Yes.
Would then allow for a rich person and a poor person to both have bad characters, because what's true for both of them is this failure to submit to God.
Right. And I understand what Sharika's saying, because I've been through, oh, that's funny. I am going through one of the hardest, most challenging seasons of my entire life. And when I didn't think that it could get any more challenging, oh God, it turned around and it did just that. So I do agree with you, Sharika, in your point of view, where you're saying, like, when ish hits the fan, it's very difficult for you to be like, okay, this is you trying to tell me, like, you know, you got my back, you're taking care of me, I'm good, but I'm out here struggling. I don't know what I'm gonna do from this day to this day. So it's still difficult either way. But I think I think Jared said it better, which is, you know, which is what you both were saying. Like, the character issue is gonna still be the character issue, like, either way. But I like the way that you said it, where there's, like, when you have money, there's no need for you to submit to a God, because it's not necessarily about, it's not for
you may feel like that.
I'm not saying that that's the case, but you may feel like that. But it's like, it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm praying so that you can, you know, pay this bill, that bill, or, you know, do something tangible for me, right? Like, because I don't have that need. It's just not there. Because
I think we have to broaden the definition of rich and broaden the definition of poor.
Okay.
Because I say that because I would say that in my poor in health, poor in spirit, poor in friendship state, it is harder to lean on God then, because the question is, why did we get here, or how did we get here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think as Christians, or let me do it further, I don't think as believers we're okay with admitting that part of our character, and sometimes when those hits.
What part of our character?
The part that when I can only speak for myself, I am taught in my lowest points to be positive.
Oh, absolutely not. When I'm low, I have no positivity for you.
No. Where I'm going is, some people may argue in your lowest point, that's when you look for a higher power to elevate you to a state of equilibrium.
Okay.
And I'm saying, as for me, that's actually the hardest time to do it, is at the lowest state.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree with that.
We have to be cognizant of how people receive God and actually call on God. Because I do know some people who have amassed wealth, and I'm not saying just capital, I'm saying wealth and friendships, emotions, abundance, and all those things, and find themselves in deeper need of God because they're unable to manage it, or they don't want to mismanage it, right? And
absolutely.
So I think because I shouldn't say that.
No, say it.
More often,
say how you feel it.
Oh, I am not scared. But I do know.
After 9 o'clock.
But what as a people, more often than not, especially West Indian community, we are poor, right? And it's a tactic that's used in our church to subconsciously inject God into your selfishness to make yourself get better.
So I like that we've gone here, because you guys have made my point about trying to pull out of Psalm 15 what's at the base, because we've changed from the topics that are there, but are still struggling with the thing. And we're loosely calling it character, but we haven't really identified what it is.
Right?
I don't know. And y'all have made my point. We've now gone to rich and poor, but the same dynamic exists, but we haven't been able to spell it out.
I don't think
make it true for what we're talking about and what Psalm 15 says and what Matthew 6 that Courtney read said. So
honestly, Jared, and one of the things I wanted to mention to your point, I don't think it's character based, and I think it's written in a way that it's supposed to be confusing. And I say that because if we were in our human state, let's speak for Sharika. If Sharika in her human state knew the formula of success, I would only operate under that formula. And this is a one-on-one decision that God gets to make it. He gets to decide it however he pleases. And he gives us these lovely riddles and things for us to sit and contemplate, the good, bad, and the indifferent. And at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter, right? So because
I'm going to push back hard right here and say,
you should. Let's do it.
I'm going to say that there is a simple formula. The challenge is in the application from one situation to the next, right? And sometimes because we are so confused by the hows, we're not really clear on what the what is, which is why I'm drilling down to the what. So I'm going to read a verse and ask a question after. Cool. I'm going to have Courtney read a verse and then we'll ask a question. Go from Matthew 16, 21. Or my question and before, I'm going to ask a question before. Does this help us get any closer to the what? Matthew 16, 21 to 26. Oh, no, 21 to 28.
21 to 28, okay.
No, 26.
26, okay. All right. From then on, Jesus began to tell his disciples plainly that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem and that he would suffer many terrible things at the hands of the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of religious law. He would be killed, but on the third day he would be raised from the dead. But Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. Heaven forbid, Lord, he said, that this would ever happen to you. Jesus turned to Peter and said, "Get away from me, Satan. You are a dangerous trap to me. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's." Then Jesus said to his disciples, "If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross and follow me. If you're trying to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your soul?"
Does that help to get us closer to the what?
Well, I guess my question for you is, what do you think it is? What do you think the word is? Because you've identified before, or you said before,
a couple of words.
What you identified was pride. What do you think it is here?
I am starting to believe that the idea of there is two words, and I think Lauren hit it, but it's a little muddled because of English, and so I would broaden it out or flesh it out to say respect for God, fear of God, love for God. Pick one of those words. If you do love properly, it will include that. Respect for God, such that you know your place and don't become prideful, right? And concern for others that don't benefit yourself. Because what we saw and we see it in Matthew 7, we haven't read that, but I see it in Matthew 7 where people were doing the character thing. Didn't we cast out demons in your name and do these things and do these things? And sometimes when we get caught in the things, I'm rich, but I care about other people, or I'm rich and I have a need of God, or how we were discussing it, I'm at my lowest point, but I don't seek out God. At the bottom of all of that is, am I self-sufficient or do I rely on God? Whether it's for money or for a low point in my life or for bad emotions, or am I self-sufficient or seeking something else? And is my respect for God guiding my actions? I think when my respect for God guides my actions, a character can be developed. But I could also have good traits that are not related to my respect to God. So it's not even really my character.
But what is the word that would encompass all of that? Because when you were talking about,
I would say it's two words. It's two words. It's respect for God. First of all, I would say respect for God does it, period. Respect for God.
Okay.
The word could be, the biblical word could probably be humility, because what we're discussing is, it sounds like the biblical definition of humility, which is to put God first, to fear him first, and then to care for others the way he would care for them. And you can only do those things if you keep pride, self, whatever, out of the picture, and you remain open and understanding to the fact of his role and your role. The minute you start to switch that around,
humility can work, Jerry. I was going with respect because of what we talked about the Pharisees and God's respect for he has this thing about respect.
So could the word be reverence?
No,
reverence, respect, fear, love, all of those things. I'm talking about concept, not word. Concept. Right? So I'm not really on a word, because you can have multiple words to represent the same concept.
Well, the only reason why I mentioned word is because when you were talking about Isaiah, you used the word pride, and that everything that you were describing and reading could fall under pride.
Here's where I went with it.
Hold on. Sorry, Jerry. Another word that we could replace pride with is selfishness. Right? So everything could fall under selfishness. Right? So it's not really pride or selfishness. It's the concept of me and what I want, whatever word best describes that concept, right? Versus me being in a submissive posture to this greater power and allowing that greater power to direct my actions. And one of the main things that he's asking of me is that I have concern for other people, that I manifest my respect for his position, his authority, and even my regard for him, my appreciation for him, right? Because he came and did this great thing for me by giving me this opportunity to have life forever. That guides my actions and would therefore produce a character, right? A character and a character of concern for other people. Genuine concern for other people that doesn't benefit me. Because one of the things we saw when we were reading Matthew is that the guys, people like, when did we do that for you? Because they were like, we would do it for you because there's benefit to us to treating you nice, right? If we knew it was you, yeah, absolutely we do it. We're not doing it just because we care about you. We do it for you because there's benefit to me to do it for you. And he's saying, no, if you did it for one of the least of these people, then you were doing it for me. They can't do nothing for you. So if you do it for them, it's to no benefit towards you.
So it's like, so I guess in my brain, it keeps thinking like, who is my confidence in, right? And so like, one of the things I'm not asking a question, but a question I had was in Matthew when I think I was talking to Trisha about this, when he fed the 5,000, right? They didn't know how it was going to happen. He did it. Right? He did the 5,000. Few chapters down, they had the same situation. And the disciples was like, how are we going to do with this? What are we going to do? The people are hungry. It's like, bruh, couple chapters back. Like, it's not you that's doing it, it's him that's doing it. And so it's like, how do we so easily forget? Like, that wasn't so, I mean, I know it's a book, so it kind of makes it look shorter than it really is. But it's like, I would not have forgotten feeding 1,000. I don't think I would have forgotten feeding 1,000 some people on a couple, the amount of food they originally had. And then further down, they did it again because they crossed over the water and was like, damn, we forgot the bread. We forgot the bread.
We forgot the bread. What are we gonna do?
Like, what?
But I think, but my answer to her was, it's easy for me to look at that verse and say like, oh man, I can't believe they forgot. But thinking into some of the scenarios that I have lived through, I guess I'm saying it's easy. I can see how a person would forget, because it's like you're not thinking about it's like whatever situation you're in, it's like it's all consuming. It's why psychologists talk about living in survival mode and why it's not good for you, because it consumes you. It consumes your thinking. Like, you can't think straight as a human being. So it's like I could understand why, something could happen right here and then you just completely forget, because you're thinking, you're trying to survive. So you're just like, I can't see anything else. All I can see is what's in front of me. It's like I'm tunnel vision. And I forgot.
And Jesus gets so frustrated, and I'm sure God gets so frustrated with us, because it's like, yo, like, I did that. Like, you forgot I did that, and this, and that,
and that,
and that.
So when I was doing CXE, I was doing these after CXE is a Caribbean Examination Council. What happened to my computer? Everybody.
It's like regions in New York City, like your exit exams.
Right. So I'm just, for anybody who may not know what CXE is this exam that you do at the end of high school, around certain subjects, to transition, and they have a bearing on the rest of your life, because sometimes they can pigeonhole you in one field or another, right? Which subjects you choose and how well you do and whatnot, unless you end up in an American system afterwards, and then it doesn't matter, right? But it could, affect the trajectory of your life depending on what subjects you choose and all those kinds of things. One of the subjects you have to do is math and English, right? And when we were doing math, I was struggling doing because what they would give you is like the past papers, the past test papers from the year before and the years before, and you would practice with those to prepare for your test. So I remember struggling with the first set of questions, and I realized that every year they were asking the exact same question. All they did was change the numbers. And if you understand the formula, right, and you know what the formula is, you can plug in the numbers. And man, I beat that.
I hate that you said that for so many reasons. I hate that you just said that, but
I was struggling with it before because every time I came upon the question, I thought it was a different question, but it was the exact same question. And I think part of the challenge that we have is that we don't recognize what the actual issue is. So we get lost in the details of our situation. And we don't make the connection back between one situation and the next because we don't see that it's essentially the same thing, right? And I think Sharika pointed it out when she said, it's meant to be challenging. I think the challenge, I agree with Sharika, is our application, right? If I can properly understand that the issue is really between my will and his will, you don't have in mind, I think we read it just now, you don't have in mind the concerns of God, but the concerns of man. That's treasure in heaven. That's character.
Taking care of my people.
Mm-hmm. You can take that same idea and apply it to any situation. And if you realize that that's what the struggle is, you go back to Job. That's what Job was being tested on. How much did Job value the concerns of God over his own concerns?
Yes. I think that, but I think
wait, hold on. And then the last thing is the primary concern of God is that we care for each other. The primary concern of God for us is faithfulness to him and caring for each other. Respect of him and his authority over us, and then concern for each other. And I think the opposite of that is pride. Because now when I'm full of myself and think highly of myself or rely on something other than him, whether it's, or not having no regard for him. It's pride and having no regard for him, because I can be prideful and then I can just not have regard for him and care about other things and still not be prideful. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Kenry. I was just closing out my thought.
You're good. I forgot what I was going to say. But it was a good thought.
You, Jared, so you connected what Sharika and Trisha were saying as well, because even when we were talking about money, because if you could be poor because of your self-sufficiency, and you could be rich because of your self-sufficiency. The problem is not the money, the problem is self-sufficiency. And if it gets to you, then you'll be rich and miserable or poor and miserable. Yeah? And there's talking to a friend of mine in the office today, and who's going through some financial struggles as well. And the way the conversation morphed, realized the problem isn't really the struggle, because God can and will provide. Is God able to trust you with what he wants to provide you with right now? And if he can't trust you, are you in a place to receive it? Because if God is, trying to prepare something for you, maybe in a different entrepreneurial venture, maybe in a different job, whatever.
Listen, Jerome, didn't nobody tell you to get on here and get in my business, okay? That's just what I'm telling you right now, all right?
I don't
know who you've been talking to, but get out my business. Please and thank you. Continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, if he's like, maybe it's in some other job or something for you, but you're moping in this one, then it's like you ask him for rain, he sent the rain in Alabama, but you're in New York and you're complaining, but the rain is where it's supposed to be. You're just not where you're supposed to be. So I like how you brought that in.
It was also helpful to me to help bring this out. Janet Jackson has a song. I don't remember which one it was, but I remember the line of the song: "Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back." Right? That is the plot of every single romantic comedy you've ever watched. I don't care what the setting is, who the characters are, where they are in the world, whether they're in space, whether they're back in time. You know, it's the same plot. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back. Sometimes it's because of what the boy did, sometimes it's because of what the girl did. But it's the same story over and over. And nowadays, the simple plot is some invading force from outer space is coming to take over the Earth and take dominion over the Earth and humans and some beings with special powers are going to help defend the Earth against this invading army. I don't care which movie, Transformers, Avengers. It's even in some of the cartoons. It's the same simple plot.
Nothing new.
I think part of our struggle is getting lost in the details and missing the what. We struggle to articulate that what. And it causes us to get lost in the details of every single circumstance. And I see it with the disciples, as Lauren pointed out, and it's Jesus' frustration, and it's really simple, because salvation is rooted on that same idea, the lordship of Christ. It's really, to be saved, I just have to make him boss and allow him and his word and any representative of his to guide my actions. And stay in that posture of humility, as Jerry said, respect, love, appreciation, and then process whatever my circumstances and look for that in this circumstance. Look for where my will is contracting against his. Look where I think I can do it without him, or I don't think I need him. Here's another example. And this is one of the examples that helped me to see it. What's the guy's name? Asa, King Asa. In the story of King Asa, he's like an information-rich story. He comes into a situation where he feels underpowered, and he prays to God to rescue him, right? And God shows up in a mighty way and rescue him. The next time he comes to a situation, he evaluates whether he had the means to deal with it himself. He did. So he went and asked a guy down the road, he paid a guy some money to help him. It worked out. Right? It worked out. He was able to solve his problem. So when he gets his foot infected and God is trying to get him to come back to relying on me, he's like, I'm going to just go to the doctors. The doctors weren't able to help him, and he never turned to God for help, because he was self-sufficient. And he only went to God where he thought he didn't have any other option.
Yeah, I guess my only thing is that I don't disagree with anything you said. I think that it gets complicated because there's an idea that I think everybody here wants to they have an idea of what their life should be like, right? And so I think it gets complicated because I think the idea is that if these things are done and in my submission, right, then my desires will be fulfilled. And when they're not being done with whatever situation it is, then it becomes complicated, right?
Absolutely.
And it can go on for years. And I guess the reality is that in many situations, it won't be better here, right? And so,
what do you mean it won't be better here?
Well, if someone's going through financial distress, if somebody's going through health issues, if somebody's going through,
those situations may not change.
those situations may never change.
Got it.
Right? That might just be what it is. Right? And so I think that's where I know that's been my struggle in times. If I was why I'm going kind of on the journey I am now, because I know that I'm a doer. Like, I'm gonna figure this joint out, right? And so you're gonna, but that's not necessarily where God wants us to be. That doesn't mean that He doesn't like us figuring out, giving us the ability to. But it's the waiting on Him and following and trusting in Him. That process, we kind of started out with that, at the beginning of the conversation. But it's the understanding. So the children, the disciples not trusting God or not even thinking about God doing, the miracle again wasn't, I don't think it's that they necessarily forgot. They could have, right? It's situation back in the same situation again, right? And the reality is there's no guarantee God's going to actually do it. Right? There's no guarantee He's actually going to do this again. Or for this particular situation, right? And so those questions kind of naturally come up. And the trusting in God portion of it is, you may trust in Him to do it, and he won't do it for whatever reason He has, right? I think that's where the struggles come in to make it really difficult.
Yeah. Then you have the three Hebrew boys.
I got a question. Is denying self and self-denial the same thing?
It can be.
Denying self and self-denial
can be, not always the same.
Depends on what you mean by self-denial or how you're defining that word.
Self-denial, it's like a practice, right? Like occasionally giving up things, activities. Because like when we're reading this, it's saying deny himself, take up his cross, right? So I think it seems like there's a practice of self-denial that we could do for a good reason. Occasionally giving up things, activities, whatever. Then there's denying self. It was like we were talking about this surrendering ourselves to Christ, determining to obey His will. And I think that maybe not everyone here in this room, but I think there's times when people can confuse those things. I think that's two different things. Like,
how successful do you think Jesus would have been at denying Himself in the Garden of Gethsemane if He hadn't been in the habit of practicing self-denial? I don't think He can. There's some of us who maybe can. Like people like Kenrick, who is, God said it, I'm gonna just do it just because, and that's the end of it.
Right.
That's it.
And there are people like that. But for most of us, there's a whole lot of habit forming that's involved in doing that.
But part of it's just fear also.
And then motivation.
Just to be clear, right?
Yeah, yes. Like it's, I would love to say it's love. I don't.
But the chair likely to come out, so you ain't.
Yeah, I was just like, whatever we got to do to get here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Jesus is always like He's practicing this this way of life and this promotion of being an other-centered person. I think I was having this conversation with my wife about this like just today. So this is like this whole thing is a sermon for me, for real. But I think when I was watching the show The Chosen, there was one part that I kind of felt some way about it. It was just like in a good way though. It was like watching Jesus basically depicting him like spending the whole day just healing people till like at the evening, he just ready to pass out, like just go to sleep. And see him complain one time about what he needed, like I need a break or I need nothing, So all the his folks around him just complain about all these other situations that they got going on and what other things. And I'm just like, look at Jesus. It's like his only concern in these situations is just the people that needed they needed. That's it. Like it wasn't even thinking about what he needed. And I'm like, dog, I don't even do that. Like how do you get to that?
It's a good question. How do you get to that?
Yeah. So yeah, how do you get to that character requirement of heaven?
How you get to the character requirement of not thinking about yourself in the way that he didn't think about himself in that scene?
Yeah, that's just
Is that
like
what
that's
you're
an
asking?
example. That was an
Yeah.
example of
Well,
it. Because I
the
can
one of
see
the
that kind of if you use that scene, that kind of reminds me of what we read earlier in Matthew. What was that? In Matthew 25. It's just like he just sitting here just giving. People need, they getting.
yeah, but I think it's also there was a pattern that he had, right? I mean, he there was a constant communication with his father, right, and a constant and that's I would assume that was the strength and the perspective that was constantly he understood, number one, his source. Jules been talk about your battery, your phone power source analogy the past couple of weeks, Jared. But he understood the source, right?
Yeah.
And he understood his mission, right?
So
he also had and I don't want to do this, but
he rested too, though. He went away.
He had a whole conversation with the source before coming down to the mission.
No, so that's what I didn't want to get into.
I don't want to get into it too tough. But a conversation was had. Like
as soon as I started saying it,
Zachariah.
I will agree with you 100%, Sharika. I'll agree with you. And I'll shift a little bit, honoring your thoughts, to come back to Courtney and say, or to come to you, Sharika, just using you illustratively, not saying that you have an issue here. How much effort does it take for you to be concerned about what's happening with your brother? Your literal brother, Yannick.
Oh, every day. So I think I wake up in the morning wondering what's going on, Yannick. It's an autopilot.
Do you have to be taught to do that?
I think you have to experience it. I don't know if I have to be taught it.
Worried about him for like a particular reason?
Just in general,
just general welfare and concern.
Yeah, I think you have to experience.
Could someone describe that for me?
I think you're taught when you're a child.
I think you have to be taught.
Go ahead, Laurie. I was going to go there. But go ahead, Laurie.
I can tell you why I think I don't have to be taught. I can tell you why I don't.
When you're a child, like I think it's it's a process to get to a space where it's natural and doesn't.
True that, Lorraine. But when you
somebody
became
has
a
to
parent,
teach you for it to become a process, for it to become a part of you.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. So when you have
I wasn't taught.
When you became a parent, was the teaching of being concerned about people from being
my child is different. No.
Yeah, I guess that's my thing.
That's my point. That's my point. There's some things that are innate.
Right, you weren't taught
that we understand in certain dynamics, but somehow we can't cross apply them.
Yeah. So I don't think you can't cross apply them. I think you choose not to cross apply them.
For me, that's kind of difficult because I come from a very dysfunctional family, so that's definitely something that has to be taught. That's my experience.
Is there anyone in your life for whom it comes naturally?
So let me explain when I said I wasn't taught, but I experienced it. My brother and I weren't close when I was a kid, right? Like I told a story at the time. I didn't want no siblings. I'm not sure where you came from. Nobody asked for you. And it wasn't until we were adults in so many ways that he was in us. I remember, he's going through high school and stuff. And I'm like, oh, snap, I can actually help this young scholar. I've done some dumb stuff and I can either be his best friend or his third parent. Right. And so I experienced the idea of he might need help in this. It wasn't like somebody taught me to help him. There's this innate whatever. He might need help. And I think if we were being honest with ourselves and putting our trauma aside and putting a lot of things aside, we have that innate desire for everybody. And subconsciously or consciously, we put it aside and say no, or circumstances have led us to not do it naturally. And in some cases, you have to be retaught the idea that you can care for somebody and you can do this. But I believe we were innately born with the ability to care, and you have to experience it and lean into it.
I will say yes, and add on, there are some situations where it just happens innately, and I will add that it happens because in those situations we recognize and value the intrinsic value of that situation.
Correct.
So when you become a parent, the intrinsic value of that's my child often, not always, makes that innate.
But that's my point, Jared. When you look at people, depending on their level of closeness to you, the intrinsic value lessens. And so therefore you have to consciously decide to either A, deny self of this, like the initial, like I don't mean anyone harm, right? But I might jump based on the fact that I see something or stereotype or whatever, not because I think they will innately harm me, but life has shown me that this is a possibility. Right. And so you have to relearn the fact that, oh, this is a stereotype. Let me release this and start over. But I believe that we were innately born and we lean more on the innocence of youth to justify this innate nature. But we all have it. Life has led you to move that person further degrees from you, which is harder to do at that point.
I would say it's another way.
Causes you to protect yourself.
When I perceive the intrinsic value, it happens innately. When I, for whatever reason, don't perceive the intrinsic value, refuse to receive the intrinsic value, right, or lessen the value of the thing, I don't.
But that doesn't mean that it's not in you. So that's
yes.
That's what I'm like. It's in you.
Agreed. We're saying the same thing. Yes.
Cool.
We're saying the same thing. That's why I'm saying it is in you. Yes.
The ability.
So that's why I was going back to
the ability
about Kenrick, saying the challenge. Part of it with God is we don't perceive his intrinsic value.
Agreed. Because it's a non, as Kenrick said, is not guaranteed. Yep. At the end of the day, this is a daily fight of selfishness. And if he fed 500, there is a possibility, and maybe even a higher possibility that it may not happen, that he will not feed that 500 again. And in our heads, the intrinsic value of God, unfortunately, is that he's on my side and this is going to work in my favor. And the problem comes in when you, in so many ways, recognize this may not be about you. And then you have to fight the thought to put value on something that may not benefit you as a human in your natural state.
Correct. Yeah, because
that's a whole sermon. That's a whole sermon.
I look at it with my daughters. Like there are times when I have to let them, you step back and let them whatever. But I'm not gonna let them go too like I'm gonna step in at some point. Right? Yeah. It's not gonna go to hell, right? In a hand, like I'm gonna step in and make sure that everything's leveled off, everything's balanced out. You're not going that far. That's not the way God works. Like it's you could go that far.
He'll let you fall off the cliff.
Yeah, literally the cliff.
Cliff, let me hear your thought. Because I think, sorry, go ahead, Kenrick. I thought you were done.
No. That was it.
Okay. Cliff, let me hear your thought, because I think it segues into what Sharon had said in the chat.
No, I haven't been saying anything because I think we've all been reaching the point, man. My point was just that it was selfishness. It's been selfishness since sin entered the world. And God has been trying to root that out of us because the community of heaven doesn't have selfishness involved. He simplified the commandments for us by saying, listen, just love God with all your heart and all your might and love your neighbor as yourself. But we struggle with understanding that whole concept in selfishness, in sin. So it's difficult for me, like you all have been saying in so many different examples, it's difficult for me to continue to love somebody and treat them. And I don't know them. I don't have a connection with them. I don't have any experience with them. I don't share anything with them. But I'm supposed to love them like I love myself. I'm supposed to give my life for them as if it was my
and that's my challenge. That's not my challenge with you or what you're saying, but that's the challenge because we can do that for our brother,
yes,
who we know, but everybody is your brother.
Exactly.
And that's where you don't perceive the intrinsic value.
Exactly.
And that's what Christ was trying to teach us, man. Because down here on this earth, that doesn't translate. If I don't know you, if I don't have any experience for you, chances of me giving you my all or dying for you.
So then you have to make somebody your neighbor. Then, like if you do that, then that will happen. Because I'm thinking like if you have a significant other, before they were your significant other, they were perfect strangers. You didn't know them, like and then at some point you got to know them, and then if you marry them, you have kids with them, then it's like, all right, this is me, this is part of me. Then it's like you bring them in. You know what I mean? So I feel like that happens. It's a process.
Yeah. I have no problem giving anybody and everybody my all, not life. I don't know if that's all.
I'm not gonna tell that lie.
Like I've already had. I think I had this conversation. When we were doing like youth church and all this stuff. I was like, I'm not giving my life for my parents. Like they're older. Like they're not. That doesn't make like right. For my kid, Jules a little older than me, so we'd talk about. No, that's my wife. I would do that. But like, it's. Is that what is requiring? Like my life for just anybody?
So no, and so okay. That's where we start wading into the how over the what, right?
Okay. I just want to make sure.
It's the ability to perceive someone's intrinsic value and in any given situation, with the consulting God, be able to be willing to give what is necessary in that situation.
Gotcha.
Whatever that is, and that could be your life, but it may not be, and it's not required of you to give your life for any and everybody. But there may be a situation where you may step in to take a bullet for somebody or to defend somebody in a situation and risk your life in that, because that's what's being asked of you in that moment. But what would drive that decision?
Sure.
Is perception of the intrinsic value of that other person and what is needed in that situation.
I heard a pastor say, Jared, that the problem itself is that it re-ups every day. Sometimes a couple of times a day. So it's like, and I think this is the problem we see with us, right? Where we just get self and selfishness out of the way. God does this thing for us. 5 minutes later or next morning, back to square one, and we have to now make this decision again. Do I trust him, or do I just have...
To your point, Jerry, I heard one author say, the problem with a living sacrifice is that it could get up off the altar.
Yep. You keep putting this on the screen, and every time you put it on it, it annoys me.
It annoys me. But it makes there's a thing sitting underneath what Ms. Sharon is saying here. The Christian's faith is in Christ regardless of the situation. Do I trust him or do I have faith in the outcome? It reveals the selfishness that sits underneath, that my engagement with God is about the benefit that I will receive. So I have faith in him based on what he'll do for me. And I point that out because one of the things Kenrick had said that I had mentioned Kenrick said something. I mentioned the 3 Hebrew boys as an illustration of how to address that. What if he doesn't? And that's what they said. The God we serve is able to deliver us from the fiery furnace. But even if he doesn't, we will not bow down. We will continue to be faithful. I think that's one of the things that Mishan is getting at here. My faith is in him, and my faith in him would lead to faithfulness in him no matter what happens in the situation, whether he does what I want or doesn't. And I'm going to ask him for what I want. I'm going to tell him this what I want. But whether he does it or not, it's not going to change my faithfulness to him. I think that is the challenge. Our faithfulness then becomes conditional because it's all about me and what happens with me and whether I get what I want or not. Yep. But we don't even perceive it. It's such a sleight of hand that we miss it. But when you can identify that selfishness is the thing, you can then start to see it show up even in prayer meeting. You think about going to a prayer meeting. Prayer meeting is one of the most selfish experiences I've ever been at.
And I don't go for that reason. I'm glad we talked about it at the end. Sorry.
When you listen to how we pray as people, it's all about me and mine.
Deliver me from this.
And the people I know that I care about, help them too.
Can I make a really quick comment that got under my skin in that same vein? So you know the people in Hawaii, I'm so sad that those things are happening to them. But I saw online someone post, oh man, the church didn't get burned down. Praise the Lord. If y'all don't shut.
But wait, that's like, so, okay. In that thought process though, when God told him that his sons will be carried off and whatever, and he was like, oh, thank God there'll be peace during my lifetime. I was like, bruh, really? This is how you felt about it? Like, as long as you don't have to deal with it, like, they can handle it after I'm gone? I was like, that is...
As long as the building ain't burnt down, don't worry about the hundreds of people. That's the building is here. Hezekiah, I'm living. I don't care what happened to y'all next. Y'all sit dead, know nothing. I'll holler at y'all later. Like...
Interestingly enough, though, Sharika is one of many instances because, like, what was that? When they had that massive tsunami in Southeast Asia, and there were in Japan, and then they've just been like these repeats of that situation where natural disaster, church remains. I'm not going to get into whether or not I think people should be broadcasting that, but I do find it rather interesting.
It's hilarious.
It's climate change.
Because
they always communicate as punishment for everybody else got punished.
You know what's also interesting? When disaster hits one community, we blast it all over the place, and then it hits another community, and nobody have nothing to say. We move on.
Nothing at all. It's fine. Don't even worry about it. People dead. It's cool.
You need to reduce your carbon footprint.
Flooding that they've had in the century, it probably got this much of a blurb or something on a ticker, right? But anyway.
The reason why I mentioned that is when you put the thing up for Miss Sharon, the reason why it bothered me so much is that
should I put it up one more time?
Don't do that.
So that she can say it with
Oh my gosh. Trust is experienced and then explained. And I think once
wait. You had to unpack that before you add on to the thought. You had to unpack it.
That's only t-shirt tweets. Come on.
Right.
Oh, I'm gonna write it down, but I still have to unpack it.
Trust is experienced, at least with God. You cannot. You don't learn to trust God. You experience trust in God. And so, because you can't learn it, you don't get up as a child and be like, let me learn this, let me learn that. It's through the experience that you build trust in this being's capability to do something. And then you take that experience and you use it to then potentially determine your steps moving forward. And so the experience gives you, in my
experience, and then explains.
And then so that was my next part of the next part of my statement, where it's like it's then explained, and that's the cycle, right? And so I struggle when it said, do you trust him or do you trust the outcome? Because in so many ways, it's the outcome that kind of is how I experience my trust.
Except Job.
Except
Job. Because it wasn't the outcome for him.
No. But in so many ways, it was his experience.
Like, but that's one situation. I always have to remind myself that the instance that we love about Job chapters is a span of time, right? And it was a cycle of okay, and going back and forth. But no, I don't think trust is practiced experience. I think it has to be developed. God has to show you that he's willing to be trusted. I don't innately decide that I want to trust God before I experience what it looks like with him. Same thing with everybody else in my life. You experience trust with someone, and then you lean in on that experience to then build what I would like to do with it next.
So you're not saying that the experience that leads, you're not saying that the experience that leads me to trust him is a deliverance experience necessarily. That's not what you're saying.
Not necessarily.
That's an experience, whatever that experience is.
Okay. But you are taught that it should be a deliverance.
Okay.
Which is why we struggle, and that's where the selfishness comes in. It's simply an experience.
It's an experience. Yeah.
Can I offer a different perspective?
I would have taught him it the other way around.
Before you offer a different experience, Cliff, I did cut in on Jerry. So
go ahead.
She clarified what I was going to ask.
Okay, go ahead, Cliff.
Thoughts, words, actions, habits, character, destiny. My thoughts form my words constitute my actions form my habits tell my tell my character shapes my destiny. It all begins with a thought. I trust you if I think I trust you. Doesn't require a lot of hard work or anything. I can just meet you and be like, yeah, I trust you.
I would even argue.
Not Sharika, but I appreciate that.
The reason why I'm saying this because I say this when I'm talking to folks about addiction. Addiction is a thought. Things are as hard as we make it. It's as easy as we make it. You say I struggle with smoking. If somebody pointed a gun to most people's head and say take another puff and your life is over, people flicking that cigarette away. Most people.
But that doesn't mean they're not going to return to it once the bullet is down. And so therefore it's a cycle.
No, it doesn't. But what we're trying to get you to understand is that it's just a thought. It's what you believe that continues to build the foundation that you build upon. I trust you just simply because I want to trust you. There are people that I've met, and this is me personally. There's people that I just met that I trust.
I
was cool with that. Now there's other people I'd be like, no, but it's a thought.
I would agree with you if you're saying that trust isn't subjective.
Well, so I think you guys are saying a lot of the same thing. There are some people for whom trust needs to be like, I need to have an experience with you to trust you. But that is still a choice that has some kind of motivation behind it. Whatever.
I am not saying that trust is subjective. I'm saying you have to. So what I'm saying is, trust is in so many ways subjective.
Even in Cliff's experience, you
have to be able to experience trust. Period, regardless of person, human being, God, or whatever. In order to then use that to decide the trust that Cliff is talking about.
You have to experience something, right?
You have to experience something.
Even in Cliff's example, him meeting someone, there was an experience there, however brief, whatever, that generated the thought.
The thought that he was able to
right?
act
There
on.
was something that happened. You know, you don't trust the person you have
You've never interacted with. Yeah,
interacted with or seen or know of, right?
So so what we're talking about is motivation, right? We are deciphering motivations and saying that you need this motivation to do that thing. Cliff is saying, regardless of what the motivation is, your decision is based on a thought, no matter what is sitting behind that thought, right? You can make a choice just because you choose to, right? Just because you choose to. I can choose to trust someone I don't know. I can give them the benefit of the doubt. I can choose to do that. However, there are some people who say that my decision to trust you is based on, needs to have all of these things sitting behind it. And I think I agree with Cliff because of what God, while God does provide that experience because he knows that some people need it, his requirement is that you respect him just because he's God. And I say that because I understand myself as a parent. Yo, you don't have to understand me. You don't have to like me. You don't have to nothing when I tell you do something. Trust me when I tell you don't touch that. And all I need from you is to obey. I need you to choose to do that. Now, will you be more willing to do that if you have an experience with me? Absolutely. Do you need that? As they would say in the Matrix, comprehension is not a requisite for cooperation. It's not a requisite. It is helpful, but it's not a requisite. And I'm leaning into Cliff there, but not disagreeing with Sharika about how valuable the experience is and how much it helps or reinforces.
I think we're gonna have to just disagree, Jared. And I'm cool with that. It's 10:15.
But Jared, if we go back to Israel again, right? Where
hold on, Gary. Let me just read this thing off from Charles and them group. What I'm hearing is trust is a choice, and how we get to that choice different from person to person. Yes, absolutely. That summarizes the thought I was saying.
Yep.
But you saw Israel going through experience after experience and then still not choosing the next time around to trust, right?
Yes.
So I don't know the experiences, but they're like, you know.
But that goes back into what we were saying in the selfishness, though, Jerome, because there's no guarantee of success.
Yeah. So their motivation was always wrong. So although they had the experience, it's like, I don't know that this will work out in our favor this time. So
yeah. So if I can have experience and still not trust is not a requisite.
No,
if I can have experience and still not trust.
Yes, if I can walk through the Red Sea and have been delivered from slavery and then end up in the desert and be concerned that the guy brought me here to starve, I can have experience with God and still
I don't think walking through the Red Sea was an experience of trust.
Yes, because you had to trust that when he said go through that you would be safe.
I don't believe that everyone who crossed the Red Sea had that conversation about trust and God.
Maybe, but they had an experience. They did have an experience.
What they had was an experience in a miracle. Because for me, it's like if I ask you, Jared, hey, can you do this for me and you, and you say yes, I'm going to trust that you do it, right?
Right.
But if I have Yannick here with me, Yannick's along for the experience. His trust isn't in you. His trust, it's just the experience that he's along for. There's a million people. So Moses had trust, potentially Aaron, throw Joshua, throw Zephora in there, a couple of other friends just for some razzle dazzle. But number 104,805.
So I will challenge that in that, except for the Egyptians who may have left Egypt because they were scared, all the other Israelites wanted to be delivered from slavery and were praying for deliverance from slavery and were delivered from slavery and had the 10 plagues leading up to that before the deliverance and went through the night and woke up the morning with the firstborn being dead and all of those things. When they walked out of Egypt,
They already
being freed as slaves. Their answer to their prayer, if they wanted to be freed from slavery, and my understanding is that they all did, they all had that experience. Now, the Egyptians who left, maybe not them, but all the Israelites would have had the experience of God's deliverance. And the Red Sea would have trust. The Red Sea, yeah. But if I've been praying for 400 years, if me and my community have been praying for 400 years for God to deliver, and then God shows up and delivers in my time, and part of his deliverance was 10 plagues, plus the loot, plus the walking out, and then the Red Sea, then I've had an experience of deliverance from this guy. I've had that experience.
But what I'm saying is me walking across the Red Sea is not an action of trust.
No, well, yes.
No, so similar to what we just said. You
was an action of trust.
You letting me out of Egypt is one thing. Crossing the Red Sea is another act of trust. Getting into the desert and actually making it through the desert every single day is an act of trust. This is there are so many steps that I'd have to consciously say I'm trusting versus I'm just along for a. We can talk about this in the after show.
I'm gonna linger a little bit because the water was standing up and there was no guarantee it wasn't going to fall.
But that doesn't mean that I trust that it was going to stay up or that it wasn't. That simply means I'm in the group.
All right, let me say it this way. When I get on a plane, I trust.
Yeah, the bus or car.
When I get on a plane, I trust that the plane is going. That's an act of trust. Once I board a plane to take off, that's an act of trust.
Who am I trusting in?
You're trusting that the plane will go up and come back down, and you'll get to your destination safely.
And even if it's not an intentional thought.
Some faith level of
trust. Like you're not going on saying I'm trusting just by stepping on to the plane. That is in and of itself.
Okay, so I can receive that, Kenrick, which is why I'm saying trust can be objective. But because I stepped on a plane doesn't mean that I'm trusting the pilot. It doesn't mean I'm trusting God. It doesn't mean I'm trusting anybody. And so when I say the children of Israel did not necessarily trust God, it could be I'm trusting the person in front of me and the person behind me, and I'm stuck in this. I'm just in, like I jokingly always say, right? Like I'll be like, yo, I gotta be on Moses' shoulders at this point. This ain't got nothing to do with God. I trust, it's not that I trust God. I trust that Moses ain't gonna get killed by God. So therefore I'm gonna chill with Moses, right? Like, and so that's why I'm saying it's not. I'm struggling to believe that because I crossed that my faith is in God.
I didn't say faith is in God. So trust and faith are two different.
Or excuse me, my trust. So let me clarify. Just because I cross doesn't mean my trust is in God. My trust can be in something, to your point, Henry. There's something at play, but that doesn't mean that it's in the God of Israel because I went over the water.
All I was saying is that it's an act of trust. And I've had an experience with this God. Whether I begin to trust him or not is a whole different story. And I'm not saying that when I trust you enough to do what you say, right? Because when I go on a plane, whether I believe in the pilot or not, I am demonstrating trust in the pilot because he's the one guiding the plane, right? I am demonstrating measure of trust in him, whether I know him personally or not. Because
I think you're again,
and so
I'm gonna let it go.
So what we are talking about is trusting and trusting in, and those are not the same thing. Right? I don't believe that there's the same thing because trusting in, as you rightly say, may have a more experiential, thing. And I think what you are defining as trusting in is faith.
And when Miss Sharon put up there, it said trusting in him. And yes, I think
in him, yes.
And therein lies, I think, my issue. Thank you for helping me see that, because trust is one thing. And this subjective trust, when I get into the plane, my trust is in a system, in a process, in my understanding of what's going on, and I trust that this thing isn't going to go bad. I know that there's two pilots. One can go to sleep and the other one can still be there. Also, they're not doing much up there. It's pretty operated. I know there's air traffic control. I know there's all kind of stuff in play. There's contingency plans. I'm trusting in the process. I don't put my trust in the pilot, right? And so I have issue with that because 1 million people didn't put their trust in God.
I agree.
1 million people trusted something, which is probably why it was hard when they got in the desert for them to really connect with this idea of God, because it's like, I ain't come over here because I believed in you per se.
I came over here because I didn't want to be in slavery anymore, and you were the one providing it. You were
Found my way out.
Absolutely. We ain't disagreeing in that at all. But what I'm saying is that they had an experience with him that could have led to trust.
They had an experience in.
I said they had experience with him.
Oh,
that could have contributed to their trust in him. It didn't. Okay. Which is why I'm saying that experience with someone doesn't necessarily translate to trust in them. While experience with someone can, it doesn't always. And so that's why I'm saying experience is not requisite to agree with Cliff, but it's valuable. Let's take these two comments and then try to close out. I also think God's perspective of our favor might be different than ours. And part of trusting God is believing that this will ultimately always be in our favor. Absolutely. Even if we can't see it. I think, yes, understanding what he means by our favor, or our good, rather, or for the good. I think we don't always share the same definition of that. So I'll agree with that. I think, Sharika, we are on the same page and saying the same thing with different words. I think we probably need to establish more common vocabulary, because I think conceptually we are in the same place. Because I don't disagree with you of the value of having an experience to trust in someone and how important that can be. But the reason I am spending a little bit of time on Cliff's point is that all our actions are decisions that are based on thought, whatever our motivations are. And I think if we can wrap our minds around that, we have more power than we think we have. Because essentially everything is choice. And choice is motivated by whatever we choose to motivate choice by. And so it's really locking in on a motivation. And it could be as simple as he's God. But for some people, he's God is not enough. It has to be, he's a God that I know. And as Kenrick would point out, God is big enough to accommodate both. Yeah, and that was the only reason I was lingering there, because it speaks to all the other things that we're talking about in terms of faithfulness to him and how much power is in choosing, as we were talking about, because we were talking about the struggle that exists. I think that's one of the things that the devil does in terms, or not the devil does, but sin through the devil. He sometimes he doesn't involve at all, and it's just our own lust. But the challenge in overcoming the will thing is really a single thought and choice, properly motivated. I think that was I think that I'm gonna start there. That's my takeaway, Cliff. I think Cliff gave me my takeaway. So, Trisha, as we are closing out, what we do is we try to think. We talked a lot about a whole lot of things and went all around the place. So I want you to extract one idea that you're going home with, one idea that, and all the things that was talked about, or maybe two, that was powerful, profound for you, notable to you, to say, I think I'm gonna go chew on that, or that was transformative, or that puts things in perspective, or just one takeaway, something you're taking from the conversation. Mine is that the power that a thought properly motivated has for helping us to overcome, for helping us to be faithful, for helping us to choose. That's my takeaway. I'm gonna go to Cliff next and then come back around.
You can go to Cliff. I'll think about it.
No, I'm not talking
you're
about
right.
I'm coming to you last. You have the honor.
Okay, because I'm like, you covered a lot of things tonight, so there's a lot to consider. So
some of these people will be taking notes in the middle, so they have their, they may be a little bit more prepared than I'm giving you a chance to it.
So me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna say a couple of things. I'm gonna say Shabbat Shalom to all of you all. Happy Sabbath.
Give to you.
my other thing is I'm gonna say I really missed y'all, man. These past few weeks when my schedule was just not lining up, and then I had bad reception. Just wanted to say I missed y'all. But I think the thing that I'm gonna pull away tonight was Courtney's question, which really made me think that I'd never really thought about it, and that was laying all your treasures up in heaven. I'm still gonna be thinking about that, man, because I never really considered. I just never really considered it, and it's a lot deeper than I had been thinking. So that's gonna be my takeaway for the year.
Shrika, only because you're next to Cliff. I'm coming to you next. So do you need a few more?
No. My takeaway is a slight relation. It is better that I believe that my faith in God lies solely in me not being important. Because if it did, I wouldn't be a Christian.
You're not going to have to unpack that. I'm sorry.
I'm not comfortable unpacking all of it on live camera, but what I can say is, if I get too wrapped up in what is happening to me, I will lose my faith in Christ. So it is better that I devalue myself in
that regard.
In life, in the name of holding the faith. And I don't mean that to say that, again, it's more so understanding the role that I play, and I'm not the key character.
Gotcha.
If I put myself in the key character role, and then my faith is very much gone.
Got it. I follow. Jerry.
One of the last things you said experience with God can lead to trust in Him, but it doesn't always. So it's not a prerequisite. And I think there are times when, unlike Kenrick, where God will just say, go, when He goes, I kind of like, well, I need this and I need that. And if you make this happen, then I have this experience. And I think a couple of times He's had to answer me in Job-like fashion. So I think I'm really beginning to appreciate that. Yeah, I don't need that experience necessarily.
Me neither. I'll pass. Garrett.
I am selfish, and I do pay attention. The outcomes are important. So
I'm with you, Kenrick, and that's why I said let me devalue myself real quick. It matters. It matters.
The process is important, like very important. But we live in a society where what we do is based upon outcomes.
Yeah.
So when you don't have control of that outcome, or you do all the things you're supposed to do, and that outcome is not guaranteed. That's why I'm not a scientist. Like, I don't hypothesize.
So, Kenrick, I want to share with you something that I found helpful for me just because it may be helpful for somebody else, not because it may necessarily be helpful for you. Sharika's world of product management and agile product management, I was introduced to the idea of X over Y. Not saying that Y is not important, but we value X over Y. And if there was a choice between the two, we're going to lean more to X over Y. So we value people over process. It's not people or process, it's people over process. And I think sometimes we are very dichotomous. And so we say, it's not that outcomes are not important, because I don't want to get burnt up in that fire. So outcomes are important. Right? But it's a valuing of the relationship over the outcome that doesn't make me think I don't need to worry about outcomes, or I can devalue outcomes, because I think they're there for a reason. And I even think in some instances it can be a helpful tool in developing the faith process. But it's that over idea gave me a little bit more peace in terms of the trusting. And Mrs. kind of captured it in this statement. But if not life, living a but if not life. And it's not if not, it's faithfulness to him regardless of the outcome, as opposed to not faith. Sometimes we think I'm having faith in the outcome. It's really a more case of the outcome is not going to affect my faithfulness. I'm not going to allow the outcome to affect my faithfulness. And so that allows me to be sad when the outcome doesn't work and be disappointed. But what's not going to happen is, what I'm working to have not happen, because I'm often not faithful in that regard, is I know my goal is to continue being faithful like Job. Yeah.
Facts.
Yeah. Courtney.
Yeah. Let me see. I got a couple things, but I think the major key, was in regards to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. It's like this motivation of genuine concern and care for others when there's no benefit for yourself. Sort of 3 points I had, just statements. Human nature wants to indulge self, not deny self. 2, do we value the concerns of God or the concerns of ourselves? And good character doesn't come by chance. It's formed by persevering and untiring effort. Those are the things I'm going to be thinking about. Like I said, it helped me with something I was thinking about this week. I'm just going to really ponder on that. And my joke, I think, for what Sharika was talking about, she was talking about, y'all talking about the airline. I just started thinking about all the memes about like Frontier Airlines. Like, so I was dying. Like, it would be like, yeah, you don't really trust them like that, do you? But yeah, that's it. Like,
you're gonna have to share that one after, because I'm not familiar with that Frontier Airlines meme. So cue it up for later.
There's a bunch of them. It's like, just
Lorraine.
So I'll explain what I'm saying. So his "I will not always" makes me reflect on his "how long." Right.
I will not always makes you reflect on what?
God's "I will not always" makes me reflect on the "how long."
Okay.
Right. Because I, with all of what we're talking about, the question that kept popping in my mind, and it kept popping out in my reading, is where he kept saying, "How long?" Like how many "how long," Lorraine? Has he said, like, how long? Like, how much times? How many things do I need to do? How many opportunity, like how many things will it take for you to see me and trust me? Like, how many of those do I have? And it's a scary thought, because though I'm thankful for his grace, there is the I will not always. And so it's like, yes, that grace period is there, but it doesn't last forever. At some point we need to get it. like we can't sit in the, oh well, you know, just give me, like, he's like, look, how long do I have to show you? How many things do I need to tell you? How many examples do I need to give you? And it can't be, oh, well, I thought that maybe I had more. Like, I gave you plenty of things, Lorraine. And what did you, like, I laid it plainly out there for you to understand it. And so that's like the sobering thought I keep thinking, like the selfishness, the trusting him, and me considering my fellow man, which I am about 70% maybe there, but like I'm not there all the way.
Understood.
And like even when he said in one of those verses, when he said, the Psalms verse he used where he said, the one that lives blameless and does what is right. One of the things I asked, I was talking to Trisha about, was there's a verse in there in Psalms, maybe. No, I think it's Isaiah, where he said, they rather a lie. They tell the seers not to see, and they tell the messengers not to give us a message. It's like, so how do we get to that place where we don't want to hear truth, we don't want to see it? Like, give us all the fluffy stuff. Don't give us the real stuff that's gonna stop the how longs. Like, for us to get to the point where we see and understand what God expects of us and just do it. And so it's like, dang, Lorraine, like, and everybody's time is different. So my how longs is different from somebody else's how long. So this could be my last night here, and it's like, dang, like, like
I'm Manasseh got 50 years, you know.
So that was just it's more of a question that's in my head. Like,
I got you. It's a good question. Trisha.
So the thing that is stuck in my mind and what I have been mulling over is a couple of things. And like Lorraine, it is in question form. So for me, I'm struggling to accept this idea of my inherent unworthiness, or I guess to your point, like a X over Y, or the thing you were saying earlier. And it's a thought that I had struggled with before, but like it kind of came back up tonight, and it's kind of hard to put into words on screen because it's very like multi-layered, but just this idea of me not meaning anything to God, but meaning everything to God, but like being worthless, but not, and the verbiage around that. So I'm kind of like, I've been thinking about that a lot during this conversation. And then because of where I am just in my life personally, the idea of what happens if what you want or the outcome in your mind that you're attached to doesn't actually happen and it happens another way. I think I've been experiencing that for a while, but I don't think that I was able to necessarily put verbiage to that experience. And so now that's something that I'm kind of thinking about. So it's not necessarily like I have like a singular thought. It's more like now I have these questions of myself, and I'm just like, how do I get to a place of resolve with them? Because if I'm honest, I'm not there.
Gotcha.
Because I am attached to these particular outcomes and how I would want things to look. So now I have to go back and question myself and ask those important questions like, well, what if these things that I'm asking for, one, don't come, or two, come in a way that I am not necessarily open to? And I don't have the answer, and I don't know what that looks like. But that's been my takeaway, and that's what I've been kind of mulling over. In case you wondered why I got like kind of quiet and got inside my head, like that's where I am, like literally where I am. And
so you use the word unworthiness, and while you probably, I'm not sure how you mean it, that flagged for me.
Yeah, it's and I say that for lack of a better word, right? So like growing up, I've been in church practically my entire life. So like going to church on Sabbath, going to church on Sunday, like I've done it all. So there is a particular language that I'm very used to hearing when it comes to talking about, religion and Christ and things of that nature. And it's usually, for me, seems like it's rooted in like, I can't think of another word except for worthlessness. Like, things like, you're no good, you're filthy rags, like, that type of rhetoric. It's just like, it's really hard for me to wrap my mind around and to digest, especially for someone who is who is currently practicing to not be so, you guys were talking about earlier about like, would you give the shirt off your back to somebody that you know or jump in front of a bullet and things like that? And I got quiet because for me, that's my life. Like I'm used to doing for everyone else and then thinking about myself last. So I don't necessarily know how to conceptualize that in my mind either. So it just gave me a lot of questions.
I got you.
On top of like the questions that I already, have and sort of kind of just like working through, but like, I don't know. So it's a lot, but yeah.
We've been having this I'm not that important conversation for a while. So we've been able to have a whole lot of conversations so that phrase has a certain meaning for us. And I think Sharika said something today that I'd like you to hold on to tighter than unworthiness or worthlessness, is that I'm not the center character in the story.
No, and I understand that. I get that. I understand.
I'm just saying that's what we mean when we talk about not being that important, that we're not the center character. And I say that because Western civilization has this me-centric thing that is so pervasive that when we talk about the gospel, we talk about God coming to save me.
Yeah, no, and I get that. I get that. I'm trying to reconcile the two in my mind, right? Because for me personally, I'm coming from a completely different experience where it's, I should think about me a little bit more, but I don't. And so it's a lot. But yeah, those were the things that I was mulling over and thinking about.
Don't push yourself out, and let's not use the language of unworthiness. Let's just elevate him as a center character, and then how I fit alongside him. It's where I fit alongside him. It's just swapping roles.
Yeah.
That's the concept that we want. That's the concept that we've been describing, and I hope that helps. I hope understanding that helps with the further questions that you have as you continue to process it.
Yeah. But it was a great conversation. I enjoyed everybody's, different like perspectives. And like I said, it gave me a lot to think about and a lot to chew on and, all that good stuff. So
we kicked off season 10 with 2 hours and 47 minutes. Normally we try
to get longer.
I blame Trisha. I'm kidding.
Wow. So we're gonna start on a bad note, and we just gonna end on a bad note. So you just gonna start throwing me under the bus from the jump, and then you're not even gonna try to redeem yourself. You just gonna go ahead and keep driving the bus.
Man,
I bet. No, you ain't gotta say nothing else.
So here's what I'll say to you, Trisha. When we first started, there were times where we got to 3 hours, and you were not here. So this didn't have anything to do with you.
Oh, well, you should have said that part first, because you made it seem like, you got a visitor and all of a sudden she just took up your time. And I'm like, no, she did not do that. Like,
I
wait a
think
minute.
you helped to take us back to that space where we were there and we enjoyed it and we loved it. And so we're thankful for that opportunity to.
I see you trying to clean up. It's okay. I'm gonna let you have it, though.
Thank you for joining us, Trisha. I hope
you got one more time.
Nothing I said today will keep you from coming back.
I don't know, Jared, because as my neighbor, you just acting real funky right now. You just, we're supposed to be brothers and sisters of the island world, and you just not showing me no type of love right now. Like, I don't know what I did to you.
Feel the love. Nah,
I wasn't feeling no love.
We appreciate no love, Jay. And thank you, Lorraine, for bringing Trisha to brighten the corner today. We're here every first and third Friday. I'm not gonna stay long today. If you don't have the app downloaded, check your phone in the app store, wherever, and download it and read with us so that when we talk, you can follow along better and even bring your contributions. In this 10th year, we want to also invite, we have a couple of spaces that we can leverage. If you want to join our conversations, hit us up and we can bring you in. As you can see, everybody's here is in a different place. Kenrick is in Spain right now, so
I know. I want to be where Kenrick is, man. It's hot. It's probably warm over there too, isn't it? Tell the truth.
Wait, it was 1 a.m. when he started.
Yeah. So
sorry.
Yeah.
Let's close out so Kenrick can go cuddle up next.
I think we need to cash up him some coffee money at this point.
Thank you, everyone, for your contributions. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing. And we'll see you again next Friday. Let us do a quick prayer and then we'll close out. If you don't mind, just bow your heads. I pray. Father, thank you again for bringing us this far, for the words that you have placed in our hearts, for the ideas that you shared, allowed us to share, and may they cause us to consider you more, be more faithful to you, and encourage others in that same vein. Be with us as we part and help us to continue being faithful to you in everything that we do or say is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Until the next time, drink up.
It was nice to meet everybody.
Yeah. Drink up.